Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. Hope everybody is well. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. And I hope you all are ready for tonight's live stream as well. So let me just move a few things around here, give myself some space, and we'll see who we've got in the chat this evening. So if I remember right, John Estelle was in nice and early today saying hello. Who else have we got here? There is... I can't see. It's covered over by the little thing at the top. We've got Mark Berracloth. Good evening to you, mate. We've got Sumberlin as well. Hello, Sumberlin. Andrew Fairbanks is in as well. ASDF, Lord Maiden. We've got Mark Wright, Peter Cooman, Ortega saying see you in the catch-up. Hello, Ortega, when you're watching this back. We've got Luke Pryor as well. We've got Connor. Nostock again. We've got Blizzards. We've got Warwick Dark Edge. We've got Mark Coley, Scott Latham, John Estelle. Back now anyway. We've got Steve Evans as well. We've got Axe and Axe. We've got Busey in there as well. We've got Peter Nicholas. We've got Marcus, the Super Pumpkin Man. Tasty Brain Drain, nice to see you in, fella. Christian, our wonderful moderator. We've got Tony Howell as well. Says, oh, you lovely people. Hope you're all keeping well. Good morning to you, VJ, as well, over in Australia. We've got James Zarmin as well. We've got Spiderlord saying, let's go. We've got Ruas in. We've got Lord Technopants, Ed Handley, Christian saying, don't forget to hit that like button. Chris Warden is in as well. We've got Carrie is in. Yoakum, good evening to you. Andrew saying, getting the sinking feeling this is going to be $300. Nah, I don't think so, mate. I'll come on to like my expectations of the price versus what was revealed on Saturday and stuff when we'll get into that stuff. But we've got Luke Pryor, said he's painting Dreadball while listening tonight. Interested to hear my thoughts. So for those that kind of maybe you're new to the stream, I know we've got quite a few in already. If you're new to the stream, I do this Monday night live stream every week. We do various different topics. Tonight we're talking about Cursed City, the Warhammer Quest game. There was a big reveal at the weekend, which was, if I'm honest, a lot more than I expected to see. And what I've done is I have literally scoured through all of the pictures that were on the stream. I've watched the stream back again. I've looked through all of the different information. I've kind of read back up on my rules for things like Silver Tower and Blackstone Fortress and stuff, and to try and give you as much information as I can about everything we know up to this point, and some kind of educated assumptions and educated guesses based upon what we can see that comes in the box. So maybe there'll be some new stuff for you tonight if you're not sure about sort of if you think the game plays for you or anything. Hopefully I'll be able to try and help you with some of that. If from what we can see, we can make some pretty clear assumptions, and then we'll also kind of might even be able to kind of point out a few things that you might not have seen as well. Hello Red Rose Wargaming. Hello Anna, how are you doing? Jacobson as well. We've got Santorius Art, Derek Hodge, Zach Matthews. We've got Jesper. We've got Neil Anderson. Hello to you, mate. Chris Dawes is in as well. We've got Jonathan Wyborn, Bobby Clark, Spunky Taz. Says, why are you buggers? Nice to see you, mate. We've got Henrik in as well. Hello to you. Flying Mammal. Hello to you and Sean. We've got, who else here? Loads of new folks. Gareth Lewis is in as well. We've got Steve Godrew. He's really looking forward to this game. The models alone are worth it. Well, until we know the price, that's hard to say it's worth it, but I do know where you're coming from. We've got Flip Movie Maker in as well. We've got Simon Morton and Simon Tuckley. Hello to all of you folks tonight. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely a much bigger reveal, I think, on Saturday for Cursed City than I thought we were going to get. The way they'd kind of structured it up until this point was, it looked like every Thursday we got a Warhammer community post where they were kind of drip feeding one of the heroes or one of the villains from the game, little bit of background information and stuff. And whilst that's been great, I think we all assumed that this game was maybe a little bit further off, and maybe the hype train had started a bit early on its journey, and that it was going to take quite a while to get to a point where this game was coming out. But Saturday absolutely blew that out the water. Other than actually giving us a kind of like a how to play video, they shared everything that comes in the box. And that to me is a signal that we're not too far away from it now. I would assume we'll certainly be getting at least pre-orders within the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I would think. So yes, Brandon Rutter saying it's coming out end of April. I don't think it's been sort of been confirmed or anything yet, mate, but I would assume it wouldn't surprise me if we see it before that, I think. Peter says, I'm thinking of buying a new motorbike in the summer, so $300 doesn't seem very much. Yeah, Steve saying, yeah, that's fair. Price pending. Yeah, I agree with that one, mate. Greg Choice says, biggest change is D12 for event and possibly enemy AI. Yes, I'll come on to all these different bits and pieces that we get to. Simon saying he's guessing Easter. It wouldn't surprise me if it was kind of... I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, twice a year, Games Workshop do their new releases on a Friday instead of this normal Saturday. One of them is the Black Friday, and the other one I'm pretty sure is Good Friday, like Easter Friday. So it could quite possibly be that that's when we see this one as well. Neil saying, have they accelerated the release? Have they got copies earlier than expected? Quite possibly, mate. I had considered that. And maybe what might have happened is something else they've been waiting for could possibly have been delayed. So this has been pulled forward in the schedule to kind of to block that out as well. I've noticed they've gone to kind of almost fortnightly release windows, or they're certainly going to be going that way soon. The order forms that kind of like stores get had 2 weeks of pre-orders on them. So it seems like maybe we're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown. But that could just be kind of production issues. It could be kind of manufacturing issues coming from abroad and things as well. Neil saying, will they meet the demand? It's hard to tell, mate, if I'm honest. I mean, they're maxed out at the moment, so it'll be hard to tell, I think. Brandon saying they told their store associates, I just got back from my local GW. I'll believe it when I see it, mate. Normally the store guys tend not to know about it. But if it's coming April, then the Easter time wouldn't surprise me. The Soul Blights are getting their Underworlds box in April. Christian says he reckons 150 to maximum and 75. I'll come on to price in a little bit when I start talking about the game and things. We've got Dominic in as well. Hello to you, mate. Hello to... Let me just scroll off my screen there a little bit. We've got Arnold in as well. Hello, Arnold. Dominic's in. Colin Scott said, it looks like it has actual books again, not the pamphlets Blackstone had. Yeah, I'll touch on that one as well, mate. James Bray said I missed the talk, which is kind of like just sort of shooting the breeze at the minute. I haven't started on the main topic yet, but I'm just kind of picking up on some stuff in the chat, really. And Simon says, it's good to see they've taken the best bits of Silver Tower and Blackstone Fortress. That's certainly the assumption, mate, to be fair, anyway. And Andrew's saying, what makes me say $300 US is Kill Team Pariah Nexus is 150. Yeah, we all know Games Workshop. Like it doesn't matter what one thing costs compared to the next one, so we can kind of take that with a pinch of salt. But I'll tell you why I think it'll be roughly a certain price when I get to it. So why don't we? How are we doing for the chat? We've got what's that? Like 100 odd people in. We might as well make a start, haven't we? Well, we're like 10 minutes in or something like that. Right, let's make a start on it. So if I flick across to here, press the right buttons and stuff so I know everything's working. So folks, this weekend, as I said, the Games Workshop did their big reveal for Warhammer Quest Cursed City, and we definitely got to see a lot more than I think we expected to see. So what I've done is I've gone through everything I can find online to try and pull together as much information as possible. I've kind of zoomed in on pictures. I try to go into as much detail as I can, and I've got some stuff to share with you tonight as well, just to kind of to see if we can put some shape around gameplay and stuff as well. And I've also kind of delved into the background of some of the models as well. So if you're not familiar with the different models and things, a little bit of information on that too. So fingers crossed this all works. Here we go. So, yes, Warhammer Quest Cursed City. We do know for certain that this is a co-op game, which means it can be played solo, but it can be played with up to 4 players. And the reason I say it can be played with up to 4 is that fits with the number of dice that comes in the box. I think when they said with Blackstone Fortress, you could add a 5th player, and the 5th player tend to almost control the kind of like the AI miniatures and stuff like that, make a few small sort of decisions. But I think essentially it is a 4-player cooperative game. Co-op, for those that don't know, just means that all the players are playing together against the enemy. So today, just not long before we started the stream today, Games Workshop released a little bit more background information about the setting for the game as well. So I'm not going to read it all in detail, but I do have the details in front of me. And essentially how the background to this game came about is that essentially the city was called Mournhold, and it was ran, during the Age of Myth, it was run by basically 3 Azerite dynasties, the houses of Alton, Vosheim and Gaunt, and they had this big kind of stronghold deep in the heart of Shyish, and this is called the Ebon Citadel, which basically stood right in the centre in the island of Sarsgarand. And essentially it grew to be quite a kind of bustling city. And then during the dawn of the Age of Chaos, basically the city became the target of a demon prince. And that basically Chaos let siege to this particular city for quite some time. And then along came Radakar the Wolf, who is an ogre vampire, and he basically protected the city and fought back the chaos. And he was basically seen as the almost maybe a little bit kind of worryingly, but the hero of this city. He'd basically saved them from chaos. He fought with his Kosagi ogres defending the city. And all he really asked for was basically somewhere to to kind of take his place among the nobles that lived in the city, and also to kind of to feed his bloodlust, basically just to give him some offerings to feed his bloodlust. Then what happened was, as we know about if you follow the Age of Sigmar stuff, there was essentially the Necroquake, which was basically a massive explosion of death magic, which was centered around Shyish, and it caused all of the hordes of the undead to basically rise from the mortal realms. And this is what we see kind of soul wars and stuff being based around. And what happens here is basically this evil, if you like, this realm of death basically takes over our bad guy in this. And he basically goes on a bit of a blood rampage, starts to wipe out all of the people that live in the city. And basically he either kills all of the people that live there, or the kind of some of the nobles and stuff who he asks to kind of bow down before him and kind of bend to his will. They are offered the blood kiss and kind of can become vampires. And then he renames the city to be Ulfan Khan, which means the Wolf's Feast. So that's essentially the kind of the background to what this is. So next up, we've got basically what the contents of the box are. I always like seeing these pictures from Games Workshop. All that's missing in the background is the kind of like the smiley people playing kind of things. But what it does is, on the initial inspection, we can get quite a lot from this, and I'm going to go over this in a bit more detail as we go through the stream. But basically, it's definitely, as they mentioned themselves, it's definitely a cross of previous games like, Silver Tower, Shadows over Hammerhall, and Blackstone Fortress. Now, what we can see in this picture basically is a number of different things. We can see the square tiles, like Shadows over Hammerhall. We can see that there is the tracker at the back, which has the kind of the combat mechanic and the initiative track, a little bit like Blackstone Fortress. We can see the dice that's used. We can see the Destiny dice, kind of the wheel there as well. But we don't know at this stage whether the maps are pre-generated, like they are in, say, Blackstone Fortress, or whether they're kind of like they're like an exploration thing like they are in Silver Tower. I personally think it's going to be pre-generated because of that the encounter tracker at the back, and it will be hard to have that encounter tracker, I think, if you were kind of opening doors and stuff. But we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. We also see as well, if I can press this button here, I can do this and then you can see something. You can see a little laser pointer thing here. So what we've got here is that there's some cards down here which have like a key on the back of them, and I don't know whether they're kind of like, as you turn them over, does that basically like sort of, does that spawn the different tiles that you need for the different stuff? But yeah, this gives you a better idea of what's actually in the box. And what we can see, I think somebody mentioned in the chat as well, we can see here from the books here, there is a quest book and there is a rule book essentially, which I think we'll see better on the next slide. But it moves away from what Blackstone Fortress had, where they had the combat book, they had a book with some background information in, they had another book for, what was it called again? I forget, like the kind of the stuff that you do between rounds and things as well. So what we got here, this is basically the contents. It says that there's 8 heroes in the box. There is 42 hostiles. Now, compared to Blackstone Fortress had 9 heroes, of which 2 of them I think kind of like acted together, and it had 35 hostiles. So there is a bit more in the box. And we were talking about prices and stuff a little bit as the stream started. it's definitely not going to be $300 as was rumored, because I don't think we can really, for what is essentially similar content, maybe like slightly different numbers and stuff, but similar content to Blackstone Fortress. There's no way we're going to see that kind of price jump. My guess is it's going to be about £125. That would convert to about $210 to 350 Australian dollars and 160 euros. And before everybody comments in the chat and stuff, and I always get these comments when I talk about the different exchange rates, GW don't use normal exchange rates. They have their own exchange rates that they use for their games for the different regions. And the reasons I've come up with these numbers is because Warcry Catacombs is £125, and these are the different prices of that particular item across the different regions, which is why I'm estimating that's what I think they'll be. Blackstone Fortress, however, is still for sale on the Games Workshop website. It certainly is in the UK anyway, and that sells for £95. That's another reason why I don't think we're going to see a massive jump in price. I mean, don't get me wrong, £35 or £30, whatever I said there, is still a big jump in price. But I think for what's in the box versus kind of sort of how long it's been since Blackstone Fortress first came out, I can see £125 being about right. That would relate to if it was £95, that's $150 $220 Australian dollars, and 125 euros. The fact that Blackstone Fortress is still available on the website, and I can't see that kind of stopping anytime soon. They're not going to suddenly pull it because this comes out. I don't think that they would go with a massive jump between the two of them. So that's why I think we're potentially looking at around £125, I would guess. My assumption is it will be push-fit minis as well. Basically, Blackstone Fortress had push-fit minis. It looks like we're probably going to get the same thing here as well. The miniatures seem to have sculpted bases, a little bit like the Underworld miniatures. So that would build in with the push-fit aesthetic as well. The quest books I've talked about as well. Which you also get 10 objective markers as well, which we've not really seen much about yet. You can see them on this particular picture here. There's kind of like a skeleton pointing kind of one way, and there's like an objective marker which looks like a crow with a key in its mouth. We're not really sure how they're going to be used in the game yet, and we haven't seen really anything in more detail on those ones. But what we do know is that basically objective markers are points you can search, and they either have treasure or they'll potentially have traps in them as well. And this is something that was mentioned on the Twitch stream on Saturday. Dice wise, it says that actually before we talk about dice, just very quickly going back to the books as well. It does say, I think it says on the Curse City website that the books are packed with lore. So I'm assuming there's some background lore in there as well. Dice wise, there's D6, D8, D12s. It looks like the D20 from Blackstone Fortress has been replaced by a D12. This is no bad thing. The D20 was basically used for like enemy behavior charts, so it might just mean that there's less options. There's 12 options or 6 options if you like. It might be kind of like 1 and 2 does one thing, 3 and 4 does something else. It says that it's 28 dice, but this is the same as Blackstone Fortress. So we're talking about like this 4d6 per player. Which it sort of takes up 16 of the dice anyway, and there's some custom combat dice which are like sort of D8 size as well, and D6s. They're basically custom dice because they've got different numbers of successes on the different sides. What I would say about the cards is they look less complex than Blackstone Fortress. It seems like there's less cards in this box. Certainly from the setup picture that we saw and what we can see here on the screen as well, it seems like there's less cards. There were quite a lot of cards in Blackstone Fortress, so maybe that's a little bit of streamlining, or maybe some of the things are now done from tables and books and stuff. Excuse me. We've also got objective markers, which we've just talked about there as well, and we also get the War Scroll book as well. I think if I remember right, Blackstone Fortress gave you information to use the characters in Warhammer 40k as well, so it's nice to see that's been added. So these are the heroes. I'm not going to go into these in too much detail. I'm sure everybody's seen them. I'll give you a little bit of background about them. Basically, the Caradron Overlord character is called Dagny Holdenstock. He's basically a veteran entrepreneur with a knack for creative interpretation of the Caradron code. and he basically sees Ulfin Khan as potential for treasure and riches. So all of the heroes are there for different reasons. The Stormcast character is called Imelda Braskov, and she basically, her army was destroyed by Radakur the Wolf, and she vowed to slay the vampire at the heart of her beloved city or die trying. So she's in this for vengeance, basically. We've then got the elf here, or elven type model, I should say, is called Qualphis the Exile. I didn't actually like this model too much when I first saw it revealed, but it actually doesn't look too bad in the full lineup of the heroes now. It says that she's vowed to hunt the vampire that slaughtered her family, despite being forbidden to do so by the elders, and she's crafted magical arrows using the Oak of Ages Past. Steve Godrow is just saying, what's the War Scrolls book? It is essentially the rules to allow you to use the models in this in your games of Age of Sigmar. The hunter that we can see there is called Yeltsin Darek. He was the first model that we saw for this game, and he's basically a one-man death squad with a merciless streak a mile wide. He was once part of the Order of Zia, and he was expelled with the exact reason being unknown. So I quite like that kind of like little bit of dark background to him. We've then got Cleona Zeitingale, who is a missionary of the Cult of the Comet. She tried to warn the city about the impending doom, but her warnings basically fell on deaf ears, and now, as the last of her order to survive, she summons the power of Sigmar to try and clear the streets of vampires. And then we've also got this noble here. So if you remember when I told you the background of the story, there was a kind of like the three noble houses who basically ran the city. This is Glaurio van Alten III. He's the last surviving member of the once proven Van Alten dynasty, and he's seeking to avenge his family's honour, starting by slaying his three cousins who willingly received the blood kiss. And he's a well-trained swordsman. And I think we'll see his three cousins when we go through some of these images. Excuse me. We've then got Octran Glimskry, I should say. Basically, he spent many years in the realm of death. He's experimenting with the mortality manipulating realm stone known as Gravesand. He once worked alongside Torgillis the Chamberlain, who's one of the kind of the villains in this game, and he now seeks to end his former colleagues' experiments and rid the city of the curse. And then we have this ogre here called Brutog Corpse Eater, who is an ogre mercenary. He's acquired a taste for long dead flesh and will happily eat skeletons and rotten zombies. And he comes to Ulfin Khan not just because he's a bit hungry, but he wants to prove that he's the strongest ogre in all of Shyish. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background about each of the different characters. One thing we know now is that they're not all there for the same reason. They're kind of like they're a band that's come together who have a common goal or a common enemy, but the reasons that for them being there are not the same. And it might be that actually sometimes we get this in games, and the kind of the mechanics or the rules of the game can feed into this, where like it doesn't mean all the characters have to help each other out. They're all in it for themselves. So maybe we've got the Caradron Overlord who's in there trying to kind of steal treasure for himself, while the other ones are fighting and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if that kind of carries over into rules. Then we're talking about some of the kind of the villains, the foes that you'll come up against. Here we've got a load of bats. Nothing much to say about them. They're bats. I think you get 2 lots of the swarms of bats. It might even be as many as 10. I think I can't remember now off the top of my head. The next lot is we've got swarms of rats. Again, there's more than these 3 in the box. They look like the kind of sort of just repeat sculpts of some of these, but these are just basically kind of like rat swarms. It's one of them things where 1 or 2 might not cause too much problem, but if you get a room full of them, it's going to be a bit of a pain to deal with them. We've then got the zombies. These are called the Deadwalker zombies. Now, these have been very much the Marmite of the reveals at the weekend. Some people absolutely love them. Some people seem to absolutely hate them. I'll be honest, I do like them, I must admit. I think it's a nice change from the kind of the standard zombies that we see elsewhere. And there's some real like little stories that you can see in some of these models. They've all basically, like people are saying, why are they carrying around their like the sort of like the bits of ground and the tombstones with them? Essentially, they've been like spiked through the ground into the corpses, and unfortunately, they're kind of like when they've come up, that's all come away with them. But some of the stories, like the guy at the bottom right there, his tombstone has a picture of his face on it, and you can see he's got the same like little beard and stuff. I think you can see the one. Is it the one in the top left there? It's quite small on my screen here. Yeah, the one on the top left, I think, has got like sort of chains on them. He's got a noose around his neck. It looks like he's been some kind of like prisoner type thing and he's been locked away, and it looks like there's some kind of warning sign that's on the upper ground. We can see the one that looks a bit like a bride there at the top in the middle. She's got a bit of like a pendant around her neck, and it looks like there's a matching pendant hanging from the tombstone, almost like it's kind of like a husband's or a partner's kind of like lost his love, and she's been kind of like put underground. So there's some nice little quirky stories that come with these. So there's those 5 sculpts, and then there's another 5 as well. And again, there's a mixture of different stories here. So yeah, for me, I like them, but I do understand that some people kind of are seeing these as a little bit Marmite at the minute. Next up, we've got the basically the Ulfin Watch Skeletons Command, and the Ulfin Watch are essentially the guards, the kind of like the sort of the soldiers of the city, and they're led by a watch captain Halgrim, who we saw quite early on as well. There was mention on the Warhammer community site that basically the watch becomes a bit stronger when the banner bearer is around, so make sure that you kind of take him out first. So there's obviously going to be some kind of sort of rules for basically making them a little bit stronger, maybe inspiring them in some way. But yeah, these are really nice models. They remind me very much of the Warhammer Underworlds skeletons, but the sculpts are really nice. And again, I think there's 10 of these in total. A few different bits of sculpts, but there's a bit of a kind of like a Persian inspiration, I would say, with the kind of spiked helmets, but they're a really nice aesthetic. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the kind of like about the Ulfin Watch skeletons and why they're there when we get to the captain. Yeah, and these are a few more of them as well. Next up, we've then got the Kasagi Ogre's Night Guard, and these are basically ogre zombies, and this is the kind of the ogre army that basically came with the wolf when he came to protect the city from chaos. It's quite interesting that the one on the left hand side there is carrying a key. Even the rat next to his feet has got a key in him as well. And if these are basically the night guard, I wonder if these come out at night. So maybe there's some mechanics in there that say they come out at certain times. We'll see when the game comes out about that one, but it would be nice if that was the case. We've then got the Vargskier, which is kind of like a big beast, but it's not really a boss model. And what seems to be the case from what Warhammer community have said is that basically if you don't feed, if you're a vampire and you don't feed for long enough, basically the Soulblight curse takes over, and this is basically what you become. You become like a bit of a wild vampiric beast. And essentially what seems to be happening is this kind of thing seems to be just wandering the city, really, and it's very tough to take down. So I'm not sure whether it's going to be directly kind of looking for you, or if it's just basically out wandering the city and you might kind of stumble upon it at some point. But yeah, I think this is definitely the biggest model in the set, and it's quite impressive, really. Then we get into these vampires, which are called the Vikos Bloodborne, and this is who I think the 3 cousins that our noble Van Alten is basically looking to hunt down. And that basically when Radicur the Wolf basically had this great purge, a few of the noble houses were spared, basically as long as they basically gave it like an oath of loyalty, and they were offered the blood kiss to become part of his court. And these are kind of like sort of feral creatures, really, who basically just serve the wolf's will. And they basically hunt down and assassinate any who question his dominance. I quite like these. These are not your normal vampires. They're not the kind of like sort of very stereotypical Count Dracula type or old Warhammer fantasy type vampire type things. It's nice to see a little bit of a change in this. Somebody's saying they've gone a bit feral looking at their feet. Maybe they're in the process of changing into them Vargeists as well. Then we got Ghostslav, the Gravekeeper. He basically tends the crypts and the pits of Ulfenkorn corpse gardens, and he's basically burying his victims alive. He was one of the first models we also saw as well, and he's the first of one of the kind of like the boss monsters, if you like. We've then got these two. We've got Torgillis the Chamberlain, who basically lives in the ancient Scholars Hall in Barrowmark, and he's transformed that into a lab for his necromantic experiments. He basically says he sees and hears all. He prefers to dispatch lesser beings, which is essentially the zombies and stuff, and the skeletons. He prefers to dispatch the lesser beings to carry out his will, but he can unleash the might of his dark magic when needed. And then we've also got the Watch Captain Halgrim there as well. So basically, during the purge of the city, while he was still very much human, he swore himself and his warriors of the Watch basically to the Wolf's cause. And he was the one that was rounding up these nobles and either basically killing them or imprisoning them or basically putting them in front of the Wolf. And what happened was his fellow officers actually killed him for betraying his oath to the city. And then he was raised basically by the necromancer to lead the city's Ulfin Watch. So essentially, that's why he's a skeleton. He'd already kind of pledged to the Wolf before he was killed by some of his own soldiers, basically. The one on the left, it was probably my least favourite mini in the whole box, if I'm honest. It's a little bit busy. It's nicely done. It's nicely sculpted, but I would say that is probably my least favourite mini in the box. That one, still nice, but yeah, not my best. And then we've got Radakur the Wolf himself, who is an ogre vampire. There's been a lot of talk online. Is he really an ogre? The guys in the Warhammer community site on Twitch said he was an ogre vampire. You can kind of see that he's got that ogre kind of gut plate on there as well. So yeah, he's an ogre. He led an ogre army to come and protect the city. I think everything about him is an ogre. He might not look stereotypically like an ogre, but he is a vampire. So that's probably why. And he's essentially a vampire of ancient power and savage cruelty, and the blood kiss gave him terrifying strength and eternal life, but also inflicted upon him an almost uncontrollable blood rage. And what they've essentially said about him is he is essentially the final challenge of the game if you make it to the throne room, which is at the Citadel. You can also see over his shoulder there as well, basically the wolves over his shoulders. This is actually a two-headed wolf as opposed to two wolves over his shoulders. And we'll talk more about that in a little while. Then we're starting to talk about the kind of like the board gaming contents, if you like, the bits and pieces that actually come in the box. We know it's got the square tiles, a little bit like Shadows of Hammerhall and a bit like Silver Tower. There's an initiative track, so if I can kind of here, this is basically what you can see here where my little red cursor is. The initiative track basically is like Blackstone Fortress. It suggests that pre-generated maps. So basically what you do is you essentially flip over your combat card, which tells you to set the map up. It then tells you the spawn points, and you bring in basically your encounter cards and your initiative track. Your initiative track tells you in what order everybody goes. So the hero, does the heroes go first, or one of the heroes, one of the adversaries, another hero, that kind of stuff. And if you look really close on the picture that I showed at the start, which shows the layout of the board and everything, you can actually see those initiative cards down the side of the track. So it looks like that's been ported over from Blackstone Fortress as well. However, this track here doesn't have any numbers on it. The Blackstone Fortress one has numbers on to show spawn point 1, 2 and 3, for example. There isn't any numbers on this one, so I wonder if that changes anything. We've got Destiny dice in this as well. So for those that haven't played these games, essentially what you do is you roll, I think it's like 6 dice, and these dice are available to be used by any of the heroes during their turn. However, if you roll any multiples, so if you roll your 6 dice and you got 6 sixes, for example, let's be honest, it's going to be 6 1s. But if you roll multiples of the same number, they essentially get taken out and aren't available to be used in this particular turn. And it looks like the next slide I'll come on to a little bit more on that one, but this looks quite interesting. You can around the outside of it as well as there's a track around it, and in Silver Tower there was something called a renown wheel, and essentially as you went around the outside of that wheel, you basically kind of like leveled up, if you like. But yeah, we'll come on to that in a second. The next one I want to show you is a bit more detail about that. And then in the centre here, this red card here says basically Ulfin Khan in peril. Now on it has the 5 names of the different bosses, and the gravestone shapes that are on this card actually match these gravestone tokens here. My gut feeling is it's some kind of tracker to say which ones you've defeated. But down the left hand side there's 2 things, and it essentially says fear and influence. And the top one, basically, fear is these tokens here with the skulls on, and influence are these tokens here with like the crossed swords on. Now the crossed swords on these actually match the cards that on the original the layout of the whole board. There's a deck of cards that are beside the initiative track, and they have the same symbol on the back. So it makes me think it's something to do with kind of like combat and stuff there. And it looks like potentially it could be some kind of like countdown mechanic, because those tokens have numbers on. So if anybody's played some of the Blackstone Fortress expansions, there's one called No Respite, which is essentially if you fail to do certain things during your mission, if you fail to pick up sort of clues, if you fail to pick up any specific tokens or defeat certain bosses or whatever, the game becomes a little bit harder, if you like. And I wonder if this is like, if you fail to kind of pick up these clues, if you fail to find the treasure you're searching for, and you basically, like, because you can choose to leave the mission halfway through if you think you're going to die, for example, does Ulfenkorn become a more deadly place to kind of to be in and around? So I'm wondering how that'll track on that one. So yeah, this is the basically the wheel. And one thing we've definitely got here, we've got a daylight side and a nighttime side, and it I'll come on to why on the next cards, but I think it looks like essentially what happens is some of your foes, some of the villains, if you like, they kind of like level up when it's nighttime. So and they get stronger basically when the sun goes down. What we can see here on the bottom is you can see here there's dice on the left hand side here. And then if you look here, you can see there's a couple of dice which have, I think it's a double 4 on them. So it looks like we've still got that kind of Destiny dice mechanic here, where that basically you roll a dice. Now it might be that you can maybe use the doubles during the day, you can use everything else during the night time. Maybe they're just put on there to be out of the way so you can't use them. If you're familiar with Blackstone Fortress, there was like a red and a green triangle. I think you put the ones you could use in the green triangle, the ones you can't use in the red triangle. So it looks like we've got a similar thing here. And there's also a couple of tokens as well, basically, that would fit around these tracks here. There's 12 sort of spaces on the outside track, and there's 11 spaces on the inside track. So I do wonder whether it's a case of like, is it a kind of mechanic that keeps you pushing on, keeps you like sort of, I think there was examples in Blackstone Fortress where you could essentially clear a room and then spend a few turns like looking around and searching for treasure and things. I wonder if this has been put in to stop you doing that, to kind of keep a little bit of a pace, and that if you don't get a move on, it's going to be nighttime soon, and then the enemies are going to be a lot harder to kind of deal with. But I like the idea of this as a mechanic. So here we see some of the enemy cards. This is the Ulfen Watcher skeletons, and you'll see here in the top right hand corner you have like a sun symbol and a moon symbol, and it's really hard. You can't really read any of the writing or anything, but what you can see here is I think it's kind of like 2 sort of white D6 versus one of the D8s with a red one here, which essentially there's more successes on a D8, if you like. So it's almost as if during the sort of when it becomes nighttime, it looks like they kind of level up. And I think these cards here, it looks like some of these are on the initiative track. These are potentially initiative track cards that will get shuffled in. This one with the hourglass on makes me wonder what that could be about. I'm not really sure, but I'm sure it'll be interesting when we find it on that one. So here we have the hero cards. You can see here there's 4 squares along the top. Essentially, for those that haven't played Blackstone Fortress or Silver Tower, you have 4 dice. You roll those 4 dice, and whatever the numbers are, you put them into those particular squares. And then the way you sort of do certain actions is you might have an attack that goes off on a 6 on a 4+, let's say. So you can take any 4, 5, and 6s from that track to be able to do that. But if you roll all 1s, it might be actually that you can't use your weapon this turn, in which case that's when you can go in and start using some of the Destiny dice that are like a kind of like a common pool for everybody to use. But of course you're kind of like your fellow adventurers want to use that pool as well to do certain stuff. So there's almost that like negotiation of, well, will you leave that 6 for me because I've only got all 1s kind of thing. You can see at the top of the card as well, this one's basically blue here, and the one behind it looks like kind of golden colour. There's a mechanic in Blackstone Fortress where essentially you can get inspired. Think of it a little bit like Warhammer Underworlds, where you achieve a certain thing to become inspired. The card flips over and you get stronger, or you get more defense, or whatever it is. Essentially, it looks like the same thing here, but in this, it's called Path to Glory, and you'll see that a little bit better on the next slide. But it looks like these again are the priority cards for the combat and the encounter tracker. So here we can see the cards in a little more detail. We can't read the details. You can see this circle here essentially has the kind of like their stats in. It's hard to see what it is. It looks like it could be agility and defense and vitality, the same as Blackstone Fortress. The top one would normally be move, but it has 2 numbers in it, so I'm wondering whether we've got like a move or a run action. And we've also got, along the bottom of the card here, we have slots which basically say armor and weapons. So, and then we've also got one at the top here that looks like it says traits as well. So this will be how you kind of upgrade your characters to do different things as well during the game. And then there's a little square here as well where it looks like you can potentially put an extra dice in there where it says a carried item slot. So maybe if you find a particular weapon, that might get you an extra dice that you can kind of basically carry your weapon in there. Is there anything else to see on these ones? I think that's pretty much it for those. But here at the bottom here, you can see this path to glory thing. And it'll basically tell you that if you, for example, slay 3 enemies in a turn, you can basically kind of, this is your path to glory. You inspire and flip your card over to the other side. Again, in here we've got a secret envelope, the same as we had in Blackstone Fortress as well. Here, again, we can see the 2-headed wolf. There's a better picture of this, which I'll come on to next as well. But it does seem to suggest that we'll see the same kind of expansions that we saw in Blackstone Fortress as well, with this kind of like secret envelope allowing us to kind of like to read the end of this particular story, making it like a legacy campaign type thing, and then basically buying any expansions down the line as well. And then next, basically, this is just a bit of a better picture. You can see the 2-headed wolf there. And I think it said in today's Warhammer community post, essentially the 2-headed wolf is basically to show the strength of Radakar the wolf. And lastly, there's also a novel coming out as well for Cursed City. They do this a lot now. They did it with Beastgrave. They did it with Warcry Catacombs. They did it with Warcry and stuff. There tends to be like a novel that comes out. This one's written by C.L. Werner. He's wrote about 60 books for Black Library now. A lot of kind of fantasy stuff. A lot of sort of classic Warhammer fantasy with some darker characters. He's done a number of books called Witchfinder, Witch Hunter, and Witch Killer as well. So I think he's probably the right person to be writing these. Interestingly as well, the novel also includes a card that allows you to add an existing Warhammer Age of Sigmar hero to your warband. There's been a little bit of chat online. Some people think this might be Godric. Some people think it might be one of the necromancers on the front of the book here. There's like some kind of necromancer with a scythe there, thinking potentially it could be them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to find out what that is. So that is essentially what we know so far. We know that basically it's a mix of Blackstone Fortress and a mix of kind of Warhammer of Shadows over Hammerhall and Silver Tower. It seems like they've potentially simplified some of the card mechanics and the combat mechanics from Blackstone Fortress. Somebody in the chat there saying I keep hearing the same as Blackstone Fortress. Essentially what Warhammer Quest games do is they basically take the previous edition and they kind of improve on some bits and pieces. So Shadows over Hammerhall was a bit of a kind of taking some bits from Silver Tower that worked really well and trying to improve on it. Blackstone Fortress took some stuff from Shadows over Hammerhall and Silver Tower and tried to improve on that one. And I think essentially now they're on to the 4th edition of it. I appreciate there was older Warhammer Quest stuff as well, but of the modern day stuff, if you like. Now they're on to the 4th edition of it. They're essentially taking the best bits out and trying to streamline it as much as they can. They've certainly got it feels like that kind of legacy game where you play through the story. You could go back and play it again, but I guess you know what the end point is at that point. Where Silver Tower had a lot more replayability, if you like, but then never had any expansions. You could essentially just put new heroes through the tower. So for me, it seems really interesting. If you look back at Blackstone Fortress, there was probably about, from what I've read, about 40 hours of gameplay. So that's quite a lot of gameplay in that. People talking about saying that they think this could be quite expensive for like a starter game. I don't see this as a starter game. It's not like an intro. It's not like a Warcry kind of like 2-player starter set with a couple of factions in, and then you basically buy loads more factions down the line. This is a board game with fantastic Games Workshop miniatures. and therefore comes as an everything you need playable package, and then there'll be expansions down the line to kind of continue the story should you be enjoying it. But they're all optional. You don't have to have them. It doesn't basically change the core game, if you like. So somebody's saying here, why aren't they doing random crawling where you can use all your AOS minis in it, like the old Warhammer Quest? First of all, one of the things I'm going to say is one of the biggest complaints I'm hearing online, and actually I'm really surprised with how much negativity there is about this online. One of the biggest complaints I'm hearing is it's not what I wanted, or it's not what I expected. And unfortunately, that's just tough cheese, isn't it? That's just how it is. There's a lot of people harking back to saying, why don't they just remake the old Warhammer Quest game? I think that what we seem to forget about now is that there are a core kind of there's a fan base for the older games, but the vast majority of people who are into kind of Warhammer and stuff now they weren't playing games when the original 1995 Warhammer Quest came out. They weren't playing games then. This is aimed at a board gamer, basically. It's aimed at somebody that wants to play through it with narrative missions. Yes, you're going to get people who want to pick it up just to buy the miniatures, but there has to be some value on the actual gameplay itself as well. They're not just packaging up miniatures to shift miniatures. These have been designed specifically for this story, and yes, they're building in the ability for you to use them in Age of Sigmar, but the idea is what's in this box is a self-contained game, and you should kind of play it through from start to finish, if you like. If they just keep going back and remaking old stuff, it's kind of lazy game making, isn't it? Everybody will just say, well, it should be cheaper because you didn't have to work on the rules, and there's always going to be an audience for that kind of old school games, if you like. Look at Hero Quest is a prime example. It was a great game, but game mechanics have moved on a long way from where Hero Quest is these days. So all things kind of over. Somebody saying in the chat here, is primarily a board gamer with wargaming tendencies. This is right up my alley. I completely agree, mate. This is exactly what I was looking for. I said before this came out, I hoped it was a new Warhammer Quest game, and I hoped it was kind of like vampires and that kind of stuff. When it turned out that's what it was, I was over the moon. There's nothing I've seen so far that's changed my mind. I love the fact that it's co-op, which means I can probably get my wife to play it with me as well. She likes to play co-op type games. If not, I can play this solo. It looks like from a UK perspective, it's still going to be a number of months before we can even get anywhere close to kind of having games with other people. So for me, it kind of ticks a lot of boxes. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I seem to see a lot of stuff online at the minute where people are almost critical of other people looking forward to this. And I think that's a little bit weird. Like, just because it's not what you wanted. The last time I kind of saw this was with Warcry. People saying, well, I wanted Mordheim, and it's not Mordheim, so therefore it must be rubbish. And it's like all these people that haven't played the game yet deciding that it's already kind of like rubbish because it's not what they wanted. Games Workshop are a big company. They're designing games for kind of all different tastes and kind of people out there. Board gaming is huge right now. It's really popular, and they'd be mad to not kind of target this at not just AOS players, if you like, but target it at board gamers. And I think that's exactly what they've done. And it's part of the reason why things like Blackstone Fortress was so successful. So if you think I've missed anything, if you think there's been anything released that being talked about that I've not seen yet, I think I've kind of covered the pretty much the basics of everything we know so far. Spoke a little bit about a few assumptions about gameplay mechanics based upon what we can see. Let me know in the comments. I would love to know what you think. So folks, let me go back to here and get a drink. I am not going to go back and read through all of those different comments and stuff, that's for sure. I'll very quickly flick through and see if anybody's kind of like tagged me in anything. If you had a specific point that I didn't read out, please tell me again, because I think a lot of these are people just commenting saying I like this, or that sounds good, or that's not what I thought, or excuse me. So ESDF saying there, I'm so happy I was wrong on the Sigmarine prediction. It's exact when I saw the first few things get released for it, or get sort of teased out. The what's he called, Janssen, the kind of like the Witch Hunter and the Grave Gore. I thought this is exactly the kind of thing that I wanted. Then I saw that kind of Sylvaneth Elven model, and I thought, this feels really close to kind of standard AOS. We're going to see like what they call the Sigmarine things. We're going to see all the standard tropes in this now. And to be fair, we have seen that, but we've seen a really nice kind of twist on them. It's a lot darker in its nature. I like the way that the kind of like the bad guys that you're fighting against are kind of unique. I love the way that the main kind of bad guy, the wolf, is an ogre vampire. It's kind of not your stereotypical stuff we've seen. I love those kind of zombie ogres that are basically his army. I like the skeletons are maybe a bit more kind of traditional, but they're really nicely done. I think the zombies are a bit Marmite. People either love them or hate them. I personally really like them, and I'm looking forward to kind of painting them up. But I just like the way that it's still set in the AOS world, but it's moved away from just following that kind of same path, if you like. It's exactly what I loved about Warcry when Warcry first came out, that it was still set in that AOS world, but it moved away with some of those kind of factions and warbands that were the kind of the core Warcry ones, if you like. John saying, this is making me regret not getting Betrayal at Calth and the other Horus Heresy box game a few years ago. I think back then, mate, Games Workshop's focus was, let's fill this box full of miniatures, but we'll put some rules around it, basically. And the rules were almost an afterthought. I think what happened is you had people like sort of James Hewitt writing things like Gore Chosen, like Betrayal at Calth, actually wanting to put more effort into the rules writing. He wrote Silver Tower. He wrote Blitz Bowl, for example. And it wasn't just about selling miniatures. He wanted to put more effort into the rules. But unfortunately, what happens is with Games Workshop stuff is you get a big selection of people who just go, I don't really care. The rules have absolutely no value for me. I don't want the card. I don't want all the cards. I don't want the tokens. I don't want the boards. I don't want the books. I just want the miniatures because I like the miniatures. And you don't really get that so much with board gamers, with just general board games. It just seems to happen a lot with Games Workshop products. So I think for a long time, they didn't put the effort into writing rules, basically, but it seems like that's kind of changed over time. It's John saying the dude's wearing an entire wolf, not just the hide. Yeah, he's carrying that about on his back, isn't he? Centaurius Art, and he loves all the ogres in the set. It's a nice kind of aesthetic change, I think. James is saying, looks like the wheel has some day and night cycle. Yeah. I'll skip ahead a little bit as well. Thank you, Christian, for sharing all the different stuff as well while we've been chatting. Just Kev's in the chat as well. Palmsy's in the chat as well. Nice to see you. Six in the Head says it's basically Blackstone Fortress reskinned then, or is it a totally new game? It's a totally new game, mate, but it takes some of the rules from Blackstone Fortress, because that's what Warhammer Quest is. That was the last iteration. It's taken the rules from those particular games and taking the bits that work, taking out the bits that didn't work quite so well, improving on some bits. So this is why we can make some assumptions about what we think the rules will be like, because some of the mechanics are the same as what we've seen in the past. It's a bit like kind of Warhammer 40k 9th edition comes out, and some things are the same as 8th edition, and some things are nothing like it because they've improved them or streamlined it or wrote them in a different way. It's just an iteration, if you like. It's a bit like Zombicide as a board game. The first edition come out, and then they had the was it the Black Plague one, which basically was an improvement on the first one. A lot of the mechanics are the same, but they changed some things up. Then they brought out, what was the second one? I forget all the different ones, but they brought out a number of different Zombicide board games, each time kind of tweaking and changing the rules and adding bits and taking bits away and changing the theme. So if you like Silver Tower, if you like Blackstone Fortress, the chances are you're going to like this. If you didn't like either of those games, there's nothing in here that's going to suddenly make you think, like, oh, well, it's completely different from those ones, therefore I'm going to love this one. So I think people who are saying, I didn't like Silver Tower and I didn't like Blackstone Fortress, and then complaining this is not what they thought it was going to be, is a little bit fruitless, really. I'm surprised I see so many of those kind of comments. Let's have a look down. Slippy Tiger says, who needs friends when I can spend 200 quid on plastic? I like the limited heroes, more scope for RP and connected story, for role playing connected story. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention as well is that something that looks like it's new in this as well is on the damage for the different weapons that the heroes have. It looks like they've got like an XY number, so like sort of 2/6, for example. And I'm wondering if that's like a bit like Warcry, where you've got like a 1 to 5 sort of does this much damage, and a 6 is a critical hit, if you like, and therefore they have critical hits. So it does look like there's something in there from that. Marcus is saying, don't forget to drop a like. Thank you very much, Marcus. What we got 176 people in and 76 likes. I'm sure we can squeeze a few more out of you lot. Andrew's saying, I don't get that. Minus the price. This is literally exactly what everyone expected. Those people are crackheads. Do you know what it is, mate? If you read online in lots of, I think the kind of more of the complaints seem to be coming from the Cursed City Facebook group, but there seems to be a lot of people not happy. It's almost becoming a bit of a joke in that group now. There's a lot of people not happy with what this game is, and I must admit I'm kind of a little bit like flummoxed as to well, what were you expecting? It's a Warhammer Quest game. They've already said they were going to take the best bits from Silver Tower and from Blackstone Fortress to create this one. So it was never going to be like Mordheim. It was never going to be like Warhammer Quest 95. They weren't going to just reprint the old one. And I'm surprised people are surprised, if you like. Dan Mason says, Cursed City is more of what I wanted than what I was expecting. I was expecting Silver Tower 2, but we got something even cooler. Yeah, I kind of think that. The theme is right up my street. I love the fact that it's grounded in AOS, but it's not just another AOS game. It's kind of, if I could have had a wish list, it probably ticks all my boxes, which is why I'm being more positive about it. If it's not what I wanted, maybe I wouldn't be negative. I just wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't be interested in it, and that's what I don't get. There's a lot of people are putting a lot of kind of time and effort into complaining about something that they're probably either going to buy because they want the minis, or they just have no interest in anyway. So we've got Akimi Hakura says the original game wasn't even that good. I played the original kind of Warhammer Quest, the 95 version, maybe once or twice a long time ago, but it wasn't like I was like sort of a lot younger then. I don't remember too much about the details. I've played Silver Tower. I love Silver Tower. So yeah, this kind of like works well for me. Neil saying the packaged miniatures with Betrayal Calth and Burning of Prospero. Yes, mate. They were essentially one of the only places you could get a lot of the Horus Heresy stuff. Ed Handley saying majority of people I know who played Blackstone Fortress play no other GW games. I think this is my point about it. It's a board game. It's not a miniatures game in the sense of kind of Kill Team, in the sense of Warcry, in the sense of Necromunda. I mean, there was people saying that they basically wanted like a Necromunda version set in AOS. This is a board game. Like, if you're not into board games, you're not going to be into this. If you like skirmish games, if you like army scale games, then this definitely isn't it. And I'm surprised. It's not like Games Workshop haven't released a Warhammer Quest game in the last kind of 3 or 4 years. That people are surprised by it. That's the bit I kind of get my head around. Akimi's saying I got the Blackstone Fortress minis for Kill Team. Yeah, I think lots of people do. I think it's because Games Workshop have like an audience. They have a fan base who just love their miniatures. And so unfortunately in the past that was exactly what they did. That's why they say they were a miniatures company first and foremost, and essentially the rules were an excuse to kind of package a load of stuff together, really. Carrie's saying I like that I can play this solo and the Vampire Hunter theme ticks my boxes. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of solo games if I'm perfectly honest, but I'd rather have the opportunity to play it solo than never play it at all, kind of thing. Brandon's saying the Mordheim people don't want GW to do another Mordheim. It's that whole thing again, isn't it? Is basically if they just reprint the old one, people say it's kind of lazy. If they try and do any changes to it, it's like, well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the old one. I like to see basically new stuff coming through. I don't have that kind of rose tinted glasses about old games. If it's that great, just kind of play the old one if you like. Because it's still there. The rules are still there if you want it. Like, that's how I see that kind of stuff. I just think that there are better sculptors out there now. There are better rules writers out there now. There's more mechanics to kind of choose from. There's new ways to do stuff. We don't have to just keep going back and playing the old stuff. Andy's saying time to do. What was that? Just skipped off my screen there a little bit. something to do, time to do Space Hulk again, I think it said. Jim saying you on mute the whole time, mate. Yeah, okay, mate. I tested all this before and I know I definitely wasn't. ASDF saying nice work with prep for the stream. Thank you very much, mate. I think I was on like about 7.5 hours today, kind of like reading through everything and like sort of deciphering stuff and putting the slides and stuff together. So I'm glad it was appreciated. Spylord says this is the least AOS thing I've seen from them for a while. Proper old school. It doesn't even feel old school to me. It just feels fantasy, if you like. It's kind of like horror for me, as opposed to kind of like old school Warhammer fantasy of dwarves and elves, if you like. This feels just like it feels like a new feel for me personally. I know a lot of people kind of like definitely looking at the old school stuff. John saying a new Space Hulk box is what I'd buy. I've got Space Hulk, mate. Like, it never gets played. It's the same as Hero Quest. I've still got my original Hero Quest, and it sits on the shelf and doesn't get played. Like this is what I mean about rose tinted glasses. I think people think they want that old stuff, but actually, I bet if it actually came out, it would just sit on the shelf with everything else, and people will take the minis out and use the minis. Spunky Taz says, but the interwebs is all about me. 100%. Sin says some people will never be happy with whatever GW make, but that's generally the vocal minority. The majority will most likely love this. GW know their market better than anyone. They know what will sell. I agree with you, mate. I'm not a big GW fanboy. I'm not like kind of like I'm as critical about them as anybody. But I like to think I'm balanced in my opinion. They do things that I might not be for me or I don't agree with, and they do some things that are right up my street. This just happens to be one of those things that I'm really, really interested in, and I have been since they announced it. And it's just that everything they announce about this just keeps ticking the boxes of the things that I was looking forward to hopefully seeing in this game. But I completely get it if it's not, if for somebody else, if it's not what you want, then that's fine. But I'm confused that people thought it would be something different than it is. Like they've never kind of sort of made any noises that would suggest this was going to move away from Blackstone Fortress as a base model, if you like. VJ says, I love the way you put it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. So logically, like GW, logical. I think it's just like, I've said this before. I like to talk to people who have different opinions to me, who like different things. If we all like the same things, we end up in an echo chamber. If there's something I don't like and somebody else likes it, tell me why you like it. Convince me why potentially I might not be right to kind of to have that opinion on something. Maybe I've not considered all things. Always kind of enter into a conversation with somebody thinking they know more about some things than I do, and I'll know more about some things than they do. And somewhere in the middle, we can kind of come together and agree on stuff. But I always struggle with that, just kind of that overwhelming negativity of, this is not what I asked for, therefore everybody else is wrong for liking it. I never understand that mentality. It's just a case, as you said there, if it's not for you, it's not for you. There are other things out there that are for you and probably are not for me, because we like different things, and that's just how the world is. Christian sharing the link there for the merch. Thank you very much, mate. Just Kev says, do you think you'll stream some solo play of this all painted up? I'm not sure, mate, because I intend to paint it up if I can get my hands on one. If the price is right, if I can get my hands on it, then I'll certainly be painting it up and playing it. But I'm not sure if there's any, like, if anybody wants to see it. Like, it's a legacy style game where you don't really want the story spoiled for you. So I'm not really sure, mate. If there's enough kind of people ask for it, I might do it. It's certainly something I can do on my own for a change. But I'm not sure if people want the story spoiling, if you like. Lord Technopants, hello mate. He says, I'm pleasantly surprised by the model selection. I feel the same about the Elfie lass. Yeah, she's kind of grown on me, if you like. When I first saw her, she just didn't seem to fit with the stuff we'd already seen. There's something, I mentioned this in our Patreon chat as well, there's something very sort of different about seeing a model on a black background versus seeing the model on the white background. And that elf model on the white background that they show on the Warhammer community page just looked like every other AOS model. It didn't look like it fitted in with this particular theme. And I must admit, I was a little bit like, oh, maybe the model range is not what I was hoping it was going to be when I saw Janssen and I saw the Grave Go and stuff. But I kind of said, maybe it's just the paint, maybe it's the colour, maybe it's the paint scheme. I'll wait and see it in the full range. And I thought it would take some time to see that full range. But actually, after seeing it at the weekend and what I've shared tonight, that whole range seems to kind of hang together really nicely, actually. Nerd rage. Peter said, assuming GW have included the good bits of gameplay from their more recent successful sets, this looks to be a great game. I'm sure that there's going to be some stuff that people are not going to like. There always is. There's always some stuff that kind of will take a little while. One of the things from Blackstone Fortress was kind of like keep setting up the map and stuff was a bit of a slog at times. Where Silver Tower, you only set up the map as you exited a room, and as you went into the next one, you then drew the next tile, if you like. So that brought down setup time. I hope they've done something around that to kind of bring down setup time, but we'll wait and see, won't we? Brandon says, I was slightly concerned Warcry wasn't mentioned this reveal. If only a nod that Warhammer Quest models would get some Warcry rules. Let's not do the kill team thing where the game is in limbo for 6 months. I think Warcry's had a really good run of it, if I'm honest. I mean, we've only just got Catacombs, which has not been out that long. I've not had a chance to play it because I can't get to play games with anybody at the minute, so I've not really had a chance to use Catacombs. I would assume we might see once... I mean, we've got a load of sort of like, what they call it. We've got a load of like sort of death, like Nagash type stuff coming in the near future. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw the Lumineth stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if we see some new Warcry rules for some of the new Lumineth that's coming out. I don't think Warcry will be left in limbo. It seems to be quite sort of well supported, and I think actually it's probably been one of their best supported games in quite some time. Just Kev says, although I would welcome an expansion card deck of new heroes from AOS minis. I think we'll probably see something like that. We might even see like White Dwarf type stuff, I think. Just Kev saying, Gotrek solo player rules in White Dwarf guaranteed. Unless that's what's in the novel, in the book. Christian saying maybe an expansion to Marcus there. Sad there was no werewolf model. Yeah, I wonder does werewolf fit the theme? Werewolves only come out at night time. Maybe if there's a day and a night mechanic, it might work. I think Christian just saying I might see an expansion. Yeah, I think it's we potentially might see something like that. Carrie says I wasn't a big fan of the main baddie. Didn't realise it was an ogre vampire. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people have been a little bit kind of sort of like, oh, like that's not. I think a lot of people just thought it was like a big human vampire type thing. But I guess it's like anything, isn't it? Part of me wishes they hadn't kind of revealed the bad guy. If you like, it's a bit like a horror film where once you've seen the bad guy, once you've seen the killer, they're a little bit less scary kind of thing. I almost wish I would have liked to have seen the kind of almost. Like in a box, like some games you get where they're basically hidden away and you basically open it up when you get to that part of the story. I would have almost liked to have seen something like that. That would have been pretty cool. Andrew says the exchange rate thing. 5 years ago, prices actually were tied close to exchange rates. They've never corrected the US rate for Brexit though, and we prop up GW's bottom line. What they do, mate, is they basically protect themselves against any fluctuations in exchange rates. So if they set a price kind of versus the exchange rate, and exchange rates change quite dramatically, they're either going to make a big loss or they're going to make a big profit, basically. And everybody will expect them to kind of like realign it quickly. And what it would mean was their prices, because they're a UK company, their prices overseas would constantly be going up and down. So what they do is they fix what they call like their own internal exchange rate to basically protect them against any fluctuations. So if exchange rates go down, they're kind of protected, if you like, because they've been making a little bit more when exchange rates were the other way. And that's essentially how a lot of businesses do that. The company that I used to work for, we used to buy our raw materials in dollars, we used to make it in the UK, and we used to sell it into Europe and sell it in euros. We used to, because we were a European company, we would report our profits in euros. And we used to have those kind of like those exchange rate things built into that kind of stuff to basically, so you've got a constant price to work with. It's just a business thing. Whether they're kind of too far apart now, I'm not suggesting that it's right anymore, but that's the reason why they do it. Just Kev says currently back on the new zombie side too. Expensive upcoming month. I'm okay with baked beans. I said last week on the painting stream I wasn't going to back zombie side, the Wild West one, but I must admit that there's a lot of extra stuff being added to it, and I am tempted, but yeah, I don't think I can be affording to spend that. If it was the choice between Zombicide and Cursed City, it would be Cursed City 100 times over. So yeah, I think I'll probably be keeping my money to one side. If I knew they were going to split up by a few months, then maybe I would be tempted. Oscar, hello to you. Saying this game will be a blast. I can't wait to see the future Soulblight faction and Battletome so bad. Yeah, the Soulblight stuff. I mean, certainly I think that's what I was talking about for Warcry and stuff. I couldn't remember the name of it. I think we'll start to see that coming through. We've obviously seen some of the vampire type stuff. We've seen Skeletons have had a good resculpt now as well for this particular game. I think we're going to start to see, we might see those kind of ogre zombies coming through. I think this really sets us up nicely for what I think we can see coming through in AOS later on. Just kept seeing werewolves in an expansion along with some ghosties. Yeah, in the same way there was an expansion for Blackstone Fortress which had a load of plague bearers in it. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a load of the what they call like the Night Hunt and stuff like that coming through in this. Barry said Burning of Prospero 30k box had half decent rules and really nice game tiles. Yeah, and if you looked online, mate, there was loads of it for sale without the minis. Basically, people were buying it for the Horus Heresy minis, unfortunately. And I think that is very much sort of exactly how Games Workshop's games used to be, how their board games used to be. It's potentially one of the reasons why Dreadfleet kind of like flopped a bit, was because people couldn't use those minis elsewhere. People buy Games Workshop box games for their minis, and some people play the rules. And I think that's it's changing now. I think things like Blackstone Fortress kind of have shown that it's changing now, and board game popularity has picked up substantially. But I think certainly there's still a vast crowd of people who just want the minis. Neil says, I struggle massively with dice mechanics in 40k, but I really quickly got the Prospero mechanics. I've never played it, mate, if I'm honest. I don't really know anything at all about it. Slippy Tiger says, do you think GW was specifically targeting people who played D&D Castle Ravenloft? I think there's space for a Warhammer Quest game that has it. If they'd just gone down the standard sort of walking the streets of Hammerhall, or going round, like, if you think almost the way that Blackstone Fortress was essentially kind of, it was Silver Tower with some different rules, but the idea of things kind of changing on your moving and moving between layers of a tower type thing. It was essentially the same kind of theme. I think they've had to do something different to kind of distance itself from Silver Tower, distance itself from Shadows over Hammerhall. And you know what? D&D's not doing too bad at the minute, is it? So maybe they were kind of looking over the shoulder at that, but it also fits in with the story arc of AOS, with the Necroquake, with the Soulblight stuff coming as well. So it's probably not a bad timing, really. I think if they were talking about doing Soulblight and doing more death-inspired stuff, this was probably a good way to kind of to make a start on some of that. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we see those the Ulfin Watch skeletons like sort of coming into AOS as a faction, like not as a faction but as a unit in themselves, like those 10 with the banner and the sergeant, if you like. Danny the Boy says, do you like the zombie sculpts? I do, mate. I actually really do like them. They're just a bit different. I think they fit the aesthetic of the game. The idea that they've basically people have been buried alive by the, what's he called, Grave Gore or whatever. People have been buried alive. They've been basically like sort of spiked. Maybe they were potential vampires, and they've basically been sort of buried underground, and then had stakes kind of like slammed through them to stop them coming back, and they've come back as zombies type thing. There's a number of different kind of stories, and like I mentioned when I was talking about the different sculpts, there's some lovely little kind of like picturesque stories in the sculpts. For me, I quite like them, but I do appreciate some people think they're a bit cartoony, or they're a bit silly, or a bit over the top. For me personally, I actually quite like them. Andrew says, wait, are the complainers the board game is whining about there being models? No, mate, they're essentially they're more miniature gamers complaining that the game's not what they wanted, because I think they wanted different miniatures, or they wanted different rules. They wanted it to be more role play, or maybe they wanted it to be more skirmish like, or more kind of more Necromunda Mordheim like. So it's not board gamers that are complaining. It is people who generally buy Games Workshop products. Phil Campbell says, if there's expansions, they'll probably be tied into the areas represented by the other shields on the map, like the Gore River and the Sky Docks. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, mate. I did mention that when I was kind of when I first sort of like talked about Curse City, that I thought some of those areas could have been expansions, because not every one of those areas is linked to one of those 5 bosses now. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we see some expansions from those areas. Just Kev says, the Curse City Facebook group is a joke. I lasted 10 minutes and exited shop. It's a shame that there is a lot of people complaining in there, but there's also a lot of people really excited and coming up with some really good ideas. And like somebody was sharing one today about, I might just paint them up almost like sort of black and white style, with like some spot colours on them, like maybe some blood in them. And I think there's some great ideas in the group. There's some people who are really looking forward to this. But unfortunately, yeah, and it's something you don't see very often, that there is a minority of vocal people who almost want to kind of show their displeasure to other people who are genuinely excited about it. And you don't really see that very often. Normally what happens is when people are not happy about it, they just kind of like, well, I'll leave the group because I'm not going to buy the game kind of thing. But this seems to be, maybe it's just because we had the big reveal, really. Tony says, he's chatting to Christian there. Marco, I think they're disappointed that it won't cost $300. Quite possibly, mate. Busey says, to be honest, we talked a lot about Warcry Catacombs before that came out, and now it hardly gets a mention. Could this be the same scenario? I don't think so, mate. The reason that Warcry Catacombs doesn't get a mention is because nobody's playing it, because nobody's playing games at the minute, like, or very few people are playing games. Like, 9th edition was kind of like a 40k was the big hype coming up, but very few people are playing 9th edition at the minute. I think in this current climate, when we're not playing a lot of games, people are getting excited to paint stuff for the future. They're getting excited about new stuff that's coming out. With this game, like if this game arrived for me tomorrow, I'd be able to play it, like, because I can play it solo. So I don't think it's a case of like if it's sort of something comes out and dies. Something comes out and then people go and play it, but they don't, like, once you've got it. Once you've got it and you've painted it and you're playing it, then you're just enjoying the product. It's hard to then kind of talk about it, either like for me on like live streaming perspective, or talk about it in Facebook groups and everything else, because essentially everybody is now up to speed with it. Like, what was the hype train? What was the kind of the stuff that we were kind of like thinking about? What could it be? This could it be that? What about that? How much do you think it'll cost? What do you think is going to be in the box? Like, that happens with every new release. But then once you know everything, once you've got it in your hands, then people kind of almost retreat into themselves and enjoy the product that they've bought. So I don't think it's a case of it just kind of dying off once it comes out. I think it's partially because of what I've just said about once people get it, like the mystique, the magic's gone, if you like, the mystery's gone from it. And the other one is people are just not playing games at the minute, like not to the extent that they would be under normal circumstances. Phil says, super hyped about it. If folk don't like it, then they don't have to buy it. Exactly. Let the people who want it enjoy it. I could not agree any more than that, mate. Akimi says, it's AOS, looks so old world to me. It's got an old world-esque feel to it. But yes, it's 100% AOS. Brandon says, whatever the game is going to sell. 100%, mate. Lord Maiden says, I hope they make expansions for Curse City. I'd like to see one with Skaven and one with Chaos Guys. This feels like Vermintide. We could potentially see Skaven coming in. It does feel a bit like Vermintide. I agree with that. We could see Skaven come in. We know there's rats in the city. Like it wouldn't be kind of it wouldn't be on the will of man to see that. Chaos were kind of forced away from this by what's he called, the wolf. So I don't really want too much AOS to kind of creep into it, really. I like the idea. This is the same with Warcry. I like the idea. I'd like to see them come up with new sculpts. I'd love to see like sort of more vampires. I'd love to see more like werewolves. I'd love to see all sorts of weird constructs, rather than just going, oh, let's just pull a load of Chaos Warriors into this, or let's pull some demon models in. I'd like this to be the kind of start of some new stuff, if you like. James is saying, I've got to say, I'm also excited to see next Warhammer Quest 2, Warhammer Quest Space Hulk, with Necromunda in it as well. Pomsy said, if it's 130 quid, I've got the money and I'm on board with it, but it will probably go on the pile of shame like the rest, so let's not get carried away. I think the difference with this one, mate, for me is the fact that I can play it solo and I can play it co-op. My wife likes to play co-op games. And the theme of this game and the fact that I liked Silver Tower enough tells me that I actually probably would play this solo. The problem with a lot of stuff at the minute is like just not getting the opportunity to play stuff. So this for me is one that will get painted up and we'll see the table relatively quickly. Dancing Wall Space Quest. Spanky Taz says, ultimately, if you're not happy with it, don't buy it. GW will wait a couple of minutes and they'll release something else to try and take your cash. 100%. Malgozata says, do you think there'll be a possibility to have like a DM kind of thing? I don't think so, mate. We saw that in Shadows over Hammerhall. Silver Tower and Blackstone Fortress didn't have that. It's a co-op game. You might be able to kind of have somebody who acts as a DM and maybe kind of like an overlord, if you like, takes control of the bad guys. But I don't think they're going to be making a lot of decisions. They're essentially going to be basically rolling dice on kind of tables and moving minis around. Let me skip ahead a little bit. Let's see if I can kind of catch up because I'm well behind on the chat. Busey saying there, I hope the novel will be as good as Blackstone Fortress. That was insanely good. I bought the 2 Warcry novels and I've been really happy with those ones as well. I think I'll pick the novel up for this one. I like horror type stuff, and I get the feeling this is going to be kind of right up that kind of alley. Dan says, Wolfenstein and Curse City are my big board game purchases for this year. I don't know much about Wolfenstein, but I know it was popular. Spanky Taz says, don't worry, Andy, I'm in the Zombicide Kickstarter and you're welcome to come play anytime once we're set free again. Nice one, mate. I mean, this is the problem. I mean, it's not going to kind of arrive until March, April 2022. So it's a case of like, yes, I could buy it now knowing it'll happen in the future and I'll probably be able to get a game then. But I've then got to commit the money to it. Now that's the problem. And I'm probably committing the money to it at a time when I'd rather spend that money on Cursed City. Sidebite says, can you see any rules being similar to those used in Fantasy Flight Descent? As I noticed today, there's a new version of that due in May. I'm not that familiar with it, if I'm honest. And Games Workshop tend not just kind of to stray that way so much. So I think the rules they're going to be tweaks on what we've already seen in Blackstone Fortress and Silver Tower. Essentially, I don't think they're going to move too far away from what they know. David said, I like to think that we undead players have always been the heart of GW and they must keep our unliving hunger sated. This game looks great. Sidebite saying the flip character cards, for example, for experience. Well, we do know that they already have that mechanic in Blackstone Fortress, and it looks like we're going to have that as well. So essentially what you'll do is it looks like the enemy cards flip basically on like a day and night mechanic. And it looks like the hero cards flip on something called Path to Glory. So when you basically reach a certain state, be it kill so many minis in a turn or find a certain weapon or whatever it will be for your particular character, the cards will flip and then you'll be basically upgraded. And it looks like we've got some slots on there where you can basically get armor, weapons. What was the other one again? I forget the other word now. But it looks like you'll be able to kind of upgrade your characters a little bit as well. Tony saying, I like the idea of the companion novel. Ed says that adversaries from Blackstone Fortress can be combined to make a combat patrol in 40k. I'd be amazed if there wasn't the AOS equivalent here. Well, the game comes with AOS cards, mate, so I would assume that exactly you'll be able to do that. Tony saying he likes the zombies. Peter saying some of my best friends are zombies. Tony said, I will definitely be playing Catacombs a lot when gaming is okay again. Yeah, me too. You all know I love Warcry. I've painted up the kind of like the set that I got. I just can't get to play it at the minute, but that doesn't mean I'm not dissatisfied with what I bought. It just means it's ready to go on it and play games. Axe and Axes, I didn't like the zombies at first glance, but now I think they have a lot of fun painting potential, like poxwalkers. I think like contrast paints and stuff for folks that just want to get them done fast will work great on those zombies. Andy Smith says, game in a box, it's a win for me. Yeah, there's nothing worse than buying like sort of like an expensive box set and then thinking, oh well, so what I've got now is I've got an entry point. What I really need to do is go and buy a box of these and a box of them and some of them and some of them. This is just a board game, and I think a lot of people who are kind of big Games Workshop fans don't always differentiate a board game experience with a miniatures skirmish game experience, and I think they sometimes think it's a lot like sort of like there's a lot more crossover. This is a board game, like pure and simple. Paul saying Skaven are everywhere. You're never more than 10 feet away from a Skaven, especially in London, mate. Peter saying, another news, I actually started my Dreadball team earlier this broadcast. Nice one, mate. Tony saying, I wasn't too fussed about Catacombs. It looked pretty, but it wasn't for me, so I didn't say much about it. Yeah, and this is another one of those things, mate, isn't it? I mean, for you as a painter, somebody that just basically paints the minis more often than actually plays the games, I wouldn't say it was kind of inspiring from that perspective. But for someone like me who loves playing Warcry, this basically added some extra bits that to a game I already enjoyed. What was that one? Luke was just saying something before I jumped off my screen there a little bit. If I can find it now. He says, please keep Sigmarines and Chaos out of this game. They don't need to be all of it. I think Skaven the only deviation I would make. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, mate. I think we might see something like the... What have I just called them again? They were in the Soul Wars box, the kind of the floaty ghost things. I've forgotten their names now. We'll probably see those, I think, maybe come into an expansion, because it makes, like they did, like I said before, they did the same thing with Blackstone Fortress. They did an expansion that basically used existing minis, so it wouldn't surprise me if we see them coming in. But yeah, I kind of agree. I'd like to see this be its own thing. Christian sharing the link for Amazon there as well for the affiliate link. Thank you very much, Christian. Axe and Axes, co-op games and heroic ladies in armour are always a big seller to my daughter. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think they've hit the right point at the right time as well with that. Like I said before, I'm more likely to get a co-op game to the table with my family than I am to get something that's very much more adversarial, I should say, if I can say the words. James is saying you could play as the baddies in Blackstone Fortress. Apparently makes it much harder for the heroes. Yeah, you can, but I don't think you get a lot of... There's not a lot of decisions. You essentially... It's like a one versus many game then, isn't it? So I think you can do it, but I don't think you'd necessarily enjoy it, because all you're trying to do is you're just trying to screw everybody else over. I like the idea of the game being co-op against the game, as opposed to just basically being that person to screw everybody over. Colin Scott, good evening, Colin. Says, will they resurrect some classic models like they did with the Amble and the Saw? Quite possibly, and especially as everybody's saying it's very much got that kind of that Vermintide, that Warhammer old world feel. Quite possibly they might see something like that, like some of those old stuff coming back. Spylord said, it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't a planned Black Friday release brought forward due to pandemic and lockdown. I think Black Friday would have been too far off, mate. I think it's... I'd be surprised if they could bring it forward that far. Sundered Sykes says, good morning, mate. I was looking at getting Gloomhaven to play with the wife. Now this is looking like a release. I'm tempted to wait and get this. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's got some similarities to Gloomhaven. But yeah, this is kind of more up my street, I think, personally. Cybite says, having not played any of the new versions of Warhammer Quest, when you mentioned solo player, do you think there's any chance of a companion app? I would doubt it, mate. There was a kind of like an app for Silver Tower, but it wasn't like a companion app. It was almost just, you could track sort of like, you basically could track your cards in there if you like. Games Workshop tend not to go down that digital route. They're a little bit behind when it comes to digital stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if we see it in the future, but if you see how long it takes them to put together like an army builder or something like that, I can't see any companion apps coming anytime soon for this kind of game. But I don't think you necessarily need it. Like, I think the game rules work where you basically you roll a dice and there's a table and that's what you need to do. So whilst it might speed things up slightly, I don't think we'll see one for this. John Ashley says, "Oi, what's on the paint table?" At the minute, mate, I am painting some of my Dreadball stuff. I'm finishing off my Deadpool bust that I was doing last week. I've got some, Mythos stuff that needs priming up, ready to be painted as well. So yeah, I've got a mixture of stuff on the table, mate. Top Table Gaming, hello, mate, how you doing? He says, I'm all in. This game's giving me tingles in my knackers. Beers and laughs kind of game for sure. Yeah, I think it's definitely that, Steve. It's it'll be nice when we can have beers and laughs, mate. But yeah, it's exactly it. Kind of, as I said before, it ticks all the boxes of the stuff I've been looking for. Mark says, bonus 9th hero character free if you buy the cursed novel. Yeah, that's what I said, mate, when I was talking through the stream. It's kind of, I'm not entirely certain. The way they've talked about it is a little bit. I've heard two kind of conflicting stories. The way they talked about it on the stream made it sound like it was a card for an existing Warhammer AOS hero that you could use in the game. And then C.L. Werner, who's the writer of the novel, said it was really cool to see one of the characters he'd created be in the game. And then people started guessing that was the 9th one. Now, it might not be. It might be one of the characters that we already know about in the game is somebody he created. So I'm not sure. My gut feeling tells me it'll be an AOS hero model that you can buy on its own. You know, when you kind of like the hero models or basically just one model in a pack. It'll be something like that, I would assume. Which makes me think it's not that Necromancer with the scythe, because I think it comes in a multi-part box where you can build a few different like Necromancers and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's like if it's one of the Circuit Marine type things. Where else we got? James is saying it's a mini or just a card. The card is in the book so that you can use an existing mini, from what we understand. Frantic, good evening. It said, one of the complaints is that people hope the gameplay is not as repetitive as Blackstone Fortress, with more interesting choices for players. Yeah, but then I guess if you didn't like Blackstone Fortress, you're probably not going to like this. Because there's enough similarities. I think it's... is there going to be more interesting choices? I don't know. I can't. You can't really tell from what we know so far. But yeah, if that was people's complaint from Blackstone Fortress, I get. But then by the same stretch, they still don't know whether that's the case or not. So then they complain about something that they don't know anything about. Busey says, I bought Blackstone Fortress for solo play at the time. Also bought a lockdown solo play bundle from Mantic, which was Haze Negan and Star Saga. Very good price, 50 quid for both. Yeah, they had some good deals on, mate, didn't they? Have you been playing them? That's the question. Brandon says, I wonder if the Ulfenkorn in Peril is the loss mechanic. Blackstone Fortress, if the deck ran out, you lost too many guys, you lost, right? I can't remember, mate. My feeling was it was like the, what did I call it again? The, if I can find it now, the no something. If I can find what I'd wrote in my notes, let me skip through it. Here we go. It was called... no, I can't find it now. Is it on this page or that page? Let me skip forward again. I'll find it. I forget what it's called. It's called no regrets. No... Here we go again. No respite. That was it. So essentially, I think... Basically, in Blackstone Fortress, you could decide to pull out of a mission like halfway through it if you thought you were going to die to try and save your character. But what you did by doing that was you didn't get the clues or you didn't get the objective that you were trying to get. And essentially, that basically, that this no respite thing basically kind of like ratcheted up the pressure to make you not do that. I can see this being very similar to that kind of thing. Where was that one gone? Nighthaunt. Thank you very much, Luke. That was the thing I was trying to remember. Yes, thanks. James is saying that as well. I knew I'd mentioned it earlier on and I couldn't remember. And Brandon saying, yeah, Nighthaunt would make sense. They're mentioned on the map. I can't remember that, mate. Yeah, it would make sense if they are then. Phil says, C.L. Werner's done some great Warhammer novels. They're quite dark. The Witch Hunter ones are brilliant. The Knights Who Protected Graves of Knights of More will be ideal for Curse City. Yeah, he's as I mentioned before, he's done He's done. It's called Witch Finder, Witch Hunter, and Witch Killer, which would fit exactly with this kind of stuff. James is saying, I'm excited for the first big expansion, Curse City: Rise of the Tomb Kings. yeah. Keep hoping, mate. I don't think I'd want to see more skeletons coming into it, if I'm completely honest. Excuse me. Axe and Axe is off to pick the kiddies up. Take care, mate. Catch you later. Marcus is in return of communities. Warwick Doctor says, well, if it was meant to release in 2020 Black Friday, a delay might have that releasing now. I'd be really surprised if it's been pushed back from 2022 for. Would it have made sense for it to be a Christmas release? Quite possibly, maybe. But yeah, maybe that's all I can think of. Maybe if it was going to be a Christmas release, it would have made sense. CC, I don't like the zombies. Too busy for my liking. A shame, as I quite like the idea of the gravestones, but in my opinion, it just added a bit too much. But here, I wouldn't be buying it anywhere. Fair enough, mate. Not your taste. Lord Tetapants says, my better half likes co-op, but she joined me for a game of Warcry and we had a right laugh, especially when she climbed her Iron Golem dwarf to the top of the bell tower. That'll do it, mate. Johnson, he's more of a painter. Playing games is more a hypothetical thing. Takes me so damn long to build and paint, but where's the hurry? Just enjoy the process. Yeah, 100%, mate. Mark saying the first expansion's been leaked, the road to Mordheim. Yeah, that ain't happening. Christian saying, zero interest in Tomb Kings. I don't like the aesthetic of them at all. I must admit, I like the colour scheme of them, but the idea of kind of like Egyptian kind of skeletons has never really done it for me either, I'll be honest. ASDF says, I'm going to head off to bed. Thanks for the great stream and chat night all. See you later, mate. Just Kev says, it feels like it was a Christmas release, so the Rona has put GW behind 3 months. I think they're behind by probably about 3 months, if I'm honest. It would make sense, because I'm trying to remember when 9th edition launched, because that was pushed back a bit as well. And obviously they were closed, where they weren't producing anything for quite some time. So it wouldn't have surprised me if this was meant to be a Christmas release. Simon Swan says it's Neve Black Talon. Is that who you think the extra character is? Is that what the rumour is? John saying, I love to get one of them zombie games as a switch for my Gaslands group. Got to be dead simple, the group I play and hate reading, sadly. I'll tell you what's a good game to play, mate, if you hate reading. I quite like Last Night on Earth, which is essentially like a kind of like a B-movie zombie game where you've got the very stereotypical, like the priest and the cheerleader and the jock, basically trying to escape from the zombies. It's a board game. It's got like miniatures in it. The miniatures are, I mean, it's relatively old now, but it's a pretty straightforward board game. It plays like a lot of fun. Don't need to read a lot, that's for sure. Steve saying, I like the rest of the models, but not really interested in these type of games. Yeah, if it's like I said before, mate, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. It's a legacy board game really, where you play through a story. Ariel saying, GW's officially priced me out, so I'm starting to look at other dungeon crawlers out there. I also ordered Dystopian Wars and keep expanding my Malifaux stuff. I'll be honest, mate, I always struggle with that kind of saying that GW have priced you out. It depends upon what you want. Like if you're going to play a game where you are constantly expanding any army, it doesn't matter what game you play, then you are going to be spending lots of money on it. But if you're playing a game where you only need 10 models, for example, like if you played Kill Team, Games Workshop wouldn't price you out. You'd buy like a Kill Team and then you just play it. If you were playing Warcry, they wouldn't really price you out. So it depends what you're spending your money on, really. I think if you're getting into 40k or AOS expecting to not spend much money, then I kind of think you maybe you're going to be surprised by it, really. So are they expensive? I mean, it's what hobbies are cheap, really? Are they expensive compared to other people? I think we've said this before. I think other people's miniatures are just as expensive now these days. But however, you need to buy more of those miniatures for the big GW games. That's just the kind of that's the bit about being priced out, I suppose. But you don't have to buy everything. Like you could just buy an army. If you have an army to play 40k, you don't have to buy sort of more models if you don't want to. So it's still a choice, if you like. James said, I think it's worth noting that this has a quest book, which might give more story and choice. Yeah, I mentioned on the when I went through the slides, mate, it had a quest book. Silver Tower had a quest book, and it was a bit like choose your own adventure type thing, like turn to this page, turn to that page. I did wonder if we'd see that similar mechanic coming from Silver Tower, which would be quite interesting, which would maybe add a bit more replayability into Cursed City, because I think because it's like a legacy type thing where you're building up to an end story point, which is that kind of like the secret envelope thing, if you like, it does tend to hit replayability. However, if there's lots of gameplay in it, then that's potentially enough. Let me just let's just jump a little bit there. Spylaw says, I think it's going to feel more progressive than Blackstone Fortress, where we just feel like different levels due to the lift and narrative. I do wonder how it's going to be. Like, is it going to be kind of you open a door and then you build them up as you go, or is it going to be a case of you build them up and all the doors are closed? Because there is door kind of tokens on this. All the doors are closed, and as you open the door, maybe you flip a card to see what's inside or something like that. So it's a bit more randomly generated monsters, if you like. I guess we'll see soon, eh? Paul saying Revenge of the Bretonians. It's about time the Brets got some love. Sidebite is saying, I would not be surprised if this game has been brought forward because of the new Fantasy Flight Descent game due for release in May. I don't think Games Workshop even look at what other people are doing from that respect. They've got, like, look how well Games Workshop are doing. Like, they have a ready-made audience for pretty much everything they make. I don't think they're too concerned about what everybody else is doing. They kind of they've got their roadmap of what they want to do, and they kind of plow ahead. I think they let other people worry about what Games Workshop are doing, if you like. I don't even think they necessarily see Fantasy Flight as a competitor in that respect so much. Maybe they do with things like kind of Star Wars Legion and that, but obviously even they're moving across now, aren't they, to Mass Atomic Games. Or Atomic Mass Games, is it, whichever way around it goes. I don't even really necessarily think they see themselves as direct competitors, if you like. John says that Witch Hunter's got full-on Solomon Kane thing going on. It's the big Witchfinder General hat, isn't it? That's what it is. I can't even pronounce that name, but hello from Ukraine. Hello to you. Phil says first expansion's Bretonian and Amazon Blood Bowl trapped in the Cursed City. The Heroes have to rescue them so they don't play in the Chaos Cup. Wouldn't surprise me. Luke saying Last Night on Earth is great crack. Yeah, I like it. It was one of the first kind of proper board games I bought, if you like. When I say a proper board game, I mean a board game that wasn't Monopoly or Game of Life type thing. Marcus says, if I end up not liking the zombies, I'll just customize them and remove all the extra stuff stacked on them. I think the problem is if you remove the stuff stacked on them, you're going to end up with a very flat top to that model. John says the Dystopian War starter looks to be great value. If it's less than $120, I may snag it, but I'd be going blind, not knowing anything about how it plays. Again, I think it's another one of those things, mate. If you, I think it is good value for what you get in the box, but then I don't know how much more you need to kind of to play a typical full-size game, if you like, or is it just what's in the box is good enough to just, like, you know, treat it like a board game, if you like. Everything in the box is enough to play, that's fine. Like Warcry for me was a great example of a game where you could just play with what was in the box and never buy anything again, but you had the option to expand it and kind of to list build with your faction or buy new factions. But I got so much gameplay out of just the stuff that was in that box, where when Kill Team came out prior to that, you did not get 2 full-size armies in that box. So you had to buy more stuff to basically play the full game, if you like. So yeah, and I don't know from Dystopian Wars. I've been painting them up and I've been reading through the rules, but I'm not entirely sure how many points is in the box versus how many points is a full game, if you like. Ed says, I don't know about not getting priced out on Kill Team. Have you seen what you need to put together a decent Eldar team? But you're confusing being competitive with playing the game. They're two different things. If you want to be competitive, you're going to spend money on any game. You've got to keep up with the latest releases. You've got to play the meta and all that kind of stuff. But that's the same with any game. you can play Kill Team by buying a box of minis. There are certain factions where you can just buy one like 30 quid box of minis and you will get your 200 points or 1,000 points. Yes, 200 points, I think, isn't it, for Kill Team? You'll get your 200 points out of it. There's other ones you'll need to buy boxes from all over the place, bits and pieces and stuff. It's a bit like Warcry. You can buy a 1,000 point box of minis, or you can go in and list build with like Stormcast, and you'll have, right, I need a box of them because I need one of those particular minis, and I need a box of them because I need two of those out, and then it starts getting expensive. So being priced out, that's a case of either chasing the meta or thinking that you need to be a completionist and you need to have everything, or buying into a game that you need to buy lots of minis without really thinking that far ahead. Sidebite says, let me go. Sorry, I'll skip over that one there. Simon says, Descent is going to be a prize turd. They have screwed up their Terranoth games over the last 3 years. FFG aren't going to be around in the coming years anyway. I would like to hope that what they're doing by kind of siphoning off the miniatures games to Atomic Mass games and concentrating on board games, they should give them a bit of longevity, really, and let them focus on it rather than trying to be like a kind of like a jack of all trades. But I know what you mean. Sidebite says, I would slightly disagree with your comments about Fantasy Flight after they pulled the GW licensing from them and the growth of X-Wing. No, this is my point, mate. When I say like they don't see Fantasy Flight as a direct competitor, I mean now. I mean, like I said before about like Star Wars Legion as a miniatures game and X-Wing and stuff as miniatures games. I know what you mean. I kind of agree with, but then they're not Fantasy Flight anymore now. They've all gone to Atomic Mass Games. Fantasy Flight as a board game creator, I think they're just another. Like, I don't think they kind of go, well, what's Fantasy Flight releasing? We better not do that, or we better do that earlier, because I think they're essentially probably different crowds generally. Basil's in from Underdog Peyton. Hello, fella. Lord Maiden says, actually, I don't think 9th edition was brought forward. It was announced while the remaining Awakening were due for release, as they were delayed. No, 9th edition wasn't brought forward, mate. It was delayed. It was pushed back. Ariel says, well, Aeronautica Imperialis was a straight-out reaction to X-Wing. I disagree, mate. Aeronautica Imperialis was a reprint, if you like, of an old game, and if it was in reaction to X-Wing, it was like 6 years too late. X-Wing had been out for ages before that. So Aeronautica Imperialis wasn't it wasn't a reaction to X-Wing. It was like if you've got a game based around aeroplanes, like that's kind of like, you know, that's that. How else do you do that kind of game, if you like? So I wouldn't say it was a straight out reaction to X-Wing. Certainly with the time scales, the delay between them, for example. Tony's saying having a hobby is expensive. Miniatures hobbying is no different than any other. Yeah, I agree, mate. And I think, again, as I've mentioned many times, you can make this hobby as expensive as you want. You don't have to buy everything that is released. You don't have to buy into those big games. There are cheaper alternatives out there. If you can't afford like sort of one game, there's other games out there that you will be able to afford. You have like for example, if you think 40k is too expensive, there's no point going in and starting to buy 40k minis. And when you see we get priced out, what you might be saying is, well, it's a lot more expensive to buy the stuff now than it used to be when I first started playing. But then that insinuates that you already have a collection which you could just continue to play with. Yoakum says, I'm sold. Like fantasy stuff more than sci-fi. Really like Blackstone Fortress. If I don't get Curse City, I'm going to change hobby. Great research, Andy. Thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping that I can pick one up as well. I've no idea how popular this is going to be. I'll certainly be pre-ordering it on 10 o'clock on pre-order day. Fingers crossed that I can get my hands on one. John says, I remember when Descent came out, it was guaranteed to get your girlfriend to dump you or something like that. Sci-Fi says, but you're right, GW do have an established player base for their products. Yeah. The GW player base is definitely more miniatures orientated, that's for sure. I think they're expanding. They're trying to kind of breach out into that board game sort of space now as well, because it's an untapped market really for Games Workshop a little bit. But I wouldn't say they were kind of reacting to what other people are doing so much. We're up to here. Spanky Taz says, side question, anyone know a good way to get rid of the mould lines on these damned Red Bull minis? This PVC sucks. Just use a sharp knife, mate, that's all I do. A sharp hobby knife. Spiderlord says, Warcry was genius. Saw me buy units I would never have had full armies for. Me too, mate. Exactly that for me as well. Spiderlord saying, I agree, Descent will flop. Sidebite says, oh, that's news to me. I'm obviously out of the loop. It's basically Atomic Mass Games who make Marvel Crisis Protocol are part of Asmodee, who is the parent company who owns Fantasy Flight and Atomic Mass Games. And what Asmodee have done is they've moved all of their miniatures games now to Atomic Mass Games. So basically they have like a miniatures games studio, and Fantasy Flight is now their board game studio, I think. And I did read somewhere that potentially card games might be changing as well. So basically, Fantasy Flight, who used to be this huge big company, are almost being picked off now and separated out into separate bits and pieces. They're still big, but Asmodee are the big company, if you like. Ed says 100 points out, 125 points. I'm joking, really. The Elder are legendary in the community for how expensive they are. Yeah, but you don't have to buy that faction. That's always my point. It's not like the only way to play this game is to spend £1,000 to kind of get a foot in the door, if you like. There are cheaper options. You can choose to buy more expensive options, but you don't have to, is my point. Brandon says, Warcry's given me thousands of points in EOS after I quit EOS to play a Warcry, the circle of life. Luke says, if GW looked at FFG, then they really are looking at the owners Asmodee and not the things they own. FFG is just the department of a big company now. Yeah, exactly, mate. That's just kind of what I was saying. Lord Maiden says, sorry, I didn't mean 9th wasn't brought forward. I meant 9th wasn't pushed back. There was already a rumour that it will be announced in the summer. It was definitely pushed back because I was supposed to be going to Adepticon in March, and I was going to the GW seminar. I had a ticket for it, and it was obviously cancelled. But they still sent me the swag bag that you were going to get from attending the GW reveal, and in that was the new Necron mini, the new Space Marine mini, information about 9th edition. So they were going to announce it back in March. So it was definitely delayed, because I think 8th edition came out in June time. So I would have assumed 9th edition was going to come out June time as well, but it didn't come out until, was it July, August, something like that. So it was I would put money on saying it had definitely been pushed back. Where's this one? Aeronautica Imperialis uses rules similar to Battlefleet Gothic. Yeah, in both GW games. Paul said Underworlds was a reaction to X-Wing of sorts. Yeah, I would agree with that, mate. I would definitely agree with that. I think what they saw was FFG with X-Wing had captured that kind of competitive miniatures games market, and Underworlds was definitely that kind of reaction. I would agree with that, mate. And you see, however, FFG, Asmodee, and now Atomic Mass Games are not a serious competitor to GW. Never really have been. I think they have the potential to be, because of the licenses they have. But the Star Wars license has been around long enough now. The Marvel license has been around long enough now. If they haven't blown up like already, they're probably not going to. I would agree. The other side of it is GW were they've just got so much market share. Johnson, with those Matic Minis, the restic material requires you to slice off the mould lines. Scraping and sanding seem to make it worse. Yeah, I think people keep thinking that they're restic. That the Mantic used to make like a resin plastic mix stuff, which was called restic. They don't do that stuff anymore. This is just PVC stuff, like board game type PVC, I think. Simon says, Andy, any thoughts on the other side, the weird tabletop war game? I've got the rulebook, mate. Weird actually sent me the rulebook for the other side. I actually really like the sound of it, mate. I think it's unfortunately the Kickstarter was delayed, which kind of didn't do them any favours when it was launched. And then obviously with the pandemic coming along, they've had some big issues with distributors and stuff like that. And I think what happened was 3rd edition Malifaux got leaked early, so they ended up kind of going with that. And I think the other side's not really had the attention that it deserves, really. I don't really think we'd have put the power there, like marketing might, if you like, behind it and try to sell it to people. The rules are pretty good. Obviously, the background lore and stuff is all built into Malifaux universe. I absolutely love the background story. The rules are pretty decent. I think that I think Weird really haven't given it a lot of love recently. But yeah, I've got the rule book, mate. I've got the King's Empire, one of the starter factions for that as well. At some point, I'll be covering some stuff about it. Probably initially with a bit of background about the lore background to the other side. But if there's any interest in it, I'll probably kind of I'll get in contact with We and see if they're interested in sending any stuff out for it. Sidebite says, what do you hope is improved over Silver Tower and Blackstone Fortress? I've not played Blackstone Fortress. I know how the game plays. I've read the rules and I know how the game plays. So I can't see anything from an experience point of view. Silver Tower. What would I like to see improved upon? I like Silver Tower. For me personally, if it was Silver Tower in a different setting with new minis and a few tweaks, I'd be happy with that. Marco says, I agree, GW doesn't necessarily react to competition but reads the market as others do. However, I still think that their very early announcements about Old World was aimed at Kings of War new players. I'm not sure, mate. Do you really think anybody like on the fence thinking about starting Kings of War decided not to bother for a game that wasn't coming for a number of years? I'm not really sure, mate. Do I think Games Workshop are worried about what Mantic are doing? I think what they saw in the marketplace was Kings of War 3rd edition was starting to pick up a little bit of momentum. There is a lot of other companies, people like what they called, who do Conquest Parabellum, they've got a rank and flank type game out. You had Warlord bringing out rank and flank games. I think did Warlord? Oh no, Warlords of Era 1 wasn't rank and flank, was it? There was somebody else had a rank and flank game as well. I think they saw that the kind of rank and flank games were not dead, and I think potentially that's why they decided to maybe announce it as early as they did, just to kind of tell people that they were coming back with something. However, I don't think they were directly worried about Mantic. They were probably just seeing that there was the way they would look at it from a company point of view is there is a number of people out there who like to play rank and flank games, and we're not operating in that market. In the same way, there are a lot of people like to play sort of skirmish style, competitive miniatures games on a small footprint, like Magic the Gathering type thing as well, and we're not part of it. So they brought out Underworlds. So I think you're right, they read in the market, but I wouldn't say it was directly Mantic related, if you like. Ben Davies says, I do have to buy everything. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. You don't have to buy everything, mate. Ed says it was 100% re-released to try and scoop up disgruntled X-Wing players who dropped after the release of 2nd edition. I'd believe more that Aeronautica Imperialis was released to kind of coincide with Adeptus Titanicus, so and they're gradually drip feeding all of these miniatures in a different scale, and at some point it builds into like a bigger thing. I'm not that sure. Like they didn't push anything within Aeronautica Imperialis. It might have picked up some of the X-Wing players, but I don't think it was. I don't think it'll have been that contrived. I could be wrong, but I personally don't think so. Spider says I keep and breed tarantulas, so it also is an expensive hobby. And then I look at things like snowboarding and airsoft. Most hobbies are pricey. The thing is to maximise your enjoyment. Lord Nova says if you proxy your models from game to game, you'll never be priced out. Take your time and buy the real minis when it's convenient. Yeah, it's one of those things where basically it's like any game. I mean, you don't have to buy official miniatures for any game. Like if you're the person that if you just play at home, like if you play with family members or you play with a few mates, like it doesn't matter what you buy. If you're going to take part in official tournaments and stuff like that, then of course that there's an expectation that you're going to buy the company's miniatures. But I think people just get hung up in thinking they have to buy the official stuff. Like, I choose to, but I know I don't have to. Dice Tail says, not sure where I am on it. Could miss, but undead and vampires is so cool. A theme that never gets old. Yeah, it's entirely up to you, mate. It's whether it's your kind of game or not. This is the kind of sort of play experience and that I love, and the miniatures look fantastic as well. But for me, the miniatures could look great if the game wasn't my kind of game. I wouldn't be buying it for the miniatures, for example. This is definitely a combination of the game and the miniatures seem to tick all the boxes for me. Spiderlord saying, for cleaning those models, cut, don't scrape. Yeah, when I say like a sharp knife, like run the blade along the mold line. Like, think about like how you would do it with metal, almost. Marcus said, I did feel like GW Speed Freaks was a reaction to Gaslands, since they were releasing new Orc stuff and just saw Gaslands, and 6 months later came out with Speed Freaks. Honestly, I think people are giving like these smaller companies too much credit. Like, there is no way Games Workshop panicked that a book by by Osprey was going to kind of steal like any of their market share. They bought Speed Freaks out because they wanted to release a few orc buggies, if you like, orc like transports. And the best way, and they do this all the time, the best way to sell big numbers of those new kits and maximize the kind of like the return on their investment, because it costs a lot of money to kind of to tool up for those type of things. The best way to do that is sell them in a box. They do it all the time. They do it with new terrain. They did it for Warcry terrain. They did it for Kill Team terrain. What they'll do is they like, for example, if they brought out them orc buggies, right, just as normal kits, then basically a few orc players will probably buy them. But if you bring it out as a bit of a box game with a number of stuff in, a little bit of discount over what they're going to sell for separately, give it some kind of rules which are pretty straightforward and pretty simple, then everybody gets excited about a new box game coming from Games Workshop. It's the same reason they do those kind of army boxes with like the two different factions in. What they do is they basically package a load of stuff in, they drop the price a little bit, they put a couple of new sculpts in there, and they basically they're a one and done run, and they sell them. Like, there's no way Games Workshop are worried about things like Gaslands. Like, within our circles where we like lots of different games, we might kind of give them a little bit more kind of airtime, if you like. But in the vast majority of things, those kind of things just don't see the light of day. Like, they're worried about retail space. They're worried about online sales. They're not worried about like sort of small kind of niche miniature agnostic games. They're concerned with selling miniatures. Johnson there, Games Workshop, besides being a luxury product, has always been a premium product as well. So in effect, doubly unnecessary in a real sense. Yeah, but I honestly don't think they're that much more expensive though than a lot of other miniature companies. We have this conversation quite often. Like, other companies have caught up when it comes to pricing. Peter says it's Alpha Gaming. Have I missed it? Oh, sorry, Alpha Gaming. I must have jumped ahead. I've missed a load of chat there. That massively jumped ahead. Let me dive in here. Simon Swan saying, improvements over Silver Tower, balancing all the heroes. Some were super easy to win with. Yeah, I would say that if you kind of metagamed it, you could certainly pick some heroes that were stronger than others. I would agree with that. But then I guess I was just kind of playing for fun, really. I was never really that worried about it. I was just picking the models that I liked the look of, basically. Warwick says, which hero was your go-to favourite? I liked the what was it called again? The kind of like the barbarian character thing. It was the first one that I painted. The one that reminded me of the barbarian off the front of Hero Quest. I forget what the character was called now, or what kind of model he was. But yeah, you know the one I mean. It was the first one I painted. John says, intriguing to hear Aeronautica Imperias has rule mechanics similar to Battlefleet Gothic. Going to have to take another look at that game. I didn't dig small models. Jim says, GW doesn't want to stop non-hobbyists playing competitors' games. All hobby roads lead to their bank somehow. To be honest, I mean, what they do is they have a business model which basically floods kind of friendly local gaming stores with their products. And if you're a shop owner, you're going to fill your shelves with stuff that's popular and stuff that sells. So by constantly releasing new stuff, you're squeezing out the smaller companies. You're stopping them getting a foothold, basically. And that's always been their business model for the last number of years. So that's what I mean about they're not worried about things like Gaslands and stuff. That's not stealing shelf space. That's not stealing kind of like painters away. The people that are going to play Gaslands rather than Games Workshop products, we're probably not going to spend much money on Games Workshop products anyway. Paul says Error 1 is rank and can be flanked, I think. Maybe that's what I was thinking of then originally. Demonic Teddy says Warhammer Total War PC game has a bunch of potential new customers. I think potentially, mate, you're right there. I think the popularity of those games is probably one of the reasons why they've kind of driven with Old World as well. I forgot about those. The popularity of those is probably one of the reasons. Tasty Brennan says the Skeletor mindset. I must possess all or I possess nothing. John said I got one of those Parabellum miniatures for their Conquest Last Argument of Kings. Wicked sculpting, but in a larger scale. Yeah, they are, mate. They are a bit bigger. 45 million in there. I can't remember, but they are. I've got the Conquest starter set. Nice models, but just too big for anything else. Demonic Teddy said one of the most popular PC strategy games, and they have no current minis game to service the fans of Total Warhammer. I wouldn't necessarily. Players who love Total Warhammer are not necessarily miniature gamers so much. It's a lot more accessible to just get a board, to get, what do you call your game and just play it. To get a PC game, if you like, and just play it. But it's the Warhammer version of Total War. It's certainly their most popular, that's for sure. Where are we up to? Yoakum saying, good night, folks. Sleep tight, dreaming about vampires, zombies, and undead stuff. Sweet dreams, mate. Warwick saying, I've really seriously been looking at the Kings of War Northern Alliance troops and heroes to use in Elder Scrolls minis game. Tiny War Games, thank you very much for your donation, buddy. Says, there's no comment, just a donation. Thank you very much. It's hugely appreciated. Alpha Gamer says, do you think there'll be a pack to update the old Warhammer Quest heroes or enemies to be compatible with Cursed City? I wouldn't have thought so, mate. One of the reasons is you can't buy Silver Tower anymore now. I think we might see something where you get White Dwarf might introduce a few bits and pieces, but I think Silver Tower is Silver Tower. Kind of forget about that now. They want you to buy the new stuff now. I don't think they really want you kind of like you. This sounds really like kind of evil business, but they don't necessarily want you using the stuff you've bought. They want you buying the new stuff that you haven't already got. So I think if anything, we might see them releasing cards for minis that are still available in AOS potentially, so that you can go and buy kind of more stuff. But the Silver Tower stuff, I wouldn't imagine we'll see much crossover from that. Excuse me. Barry says Aeronautica Imperialis may have picked up some X-Wing players that didn't switch to version 2. It might have done, mate, but probably very, 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 very few. Spanky Taz says GW are happy to have you play other folks' games. They know you'll use their paints, and we all know how candid we are replacing our spilled washes. They're a bit like Apple, as in they're kind of like they're part of the whole ecosystem. They want you as part of the whole. Like we buy your paints, we buy all of your brushes. Like we shop in your stores, we use your minis. Even if we're using your minis to play other games, like it's part of that. They introduce people into the hobby. People will drift away and come back, and when they come back, the first thing they'll do is they'll come back to GW type stuff. Generally, it's just kind of how that works, really. Where are we up to? John says, do you think GW are being a bit short-sighted as they seem to be sidelining friendly little gaming stores a bit? I don't think so, mate. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a business and they're maximising their profits. And John, Ashley Smith donated. Hope that'll buy you a pint, mate. Cheers. Thank you very much. Pubs here in the UK are closed at the moment. I think it's going to be about June before we can get to a pub, mate. But I'm sure it'll treat me to a bottle of wine or a cup of coffee or something. Thank you. what was I just going to say there? Actually, I've just, a cup of coffee, definitely. What was I just going to say there? What were you talking about? Do I think they're short-sighted? I think they're trying to maximise profits at the moment. I think they know they've got a limited amount of product. They've created a need for it. And they are essentially basically maximising their ability to sell it at as much money as possible. Will potentially some of those shops close? Yes, because I think that a lot of companies, a lot of shops basically just sort of trade on the back of selling Games Workshop stuff. And if they've kind of gone all in on Games Workshop and not diversified, then I think some of them probably will go under. But at the end of the day, they're not in this to basically keep shops open, if you like. I think generally, I think in the US that a lot of people play in shops. I think in the UK a lot of people play at like gaming clubs. So from a UK perspective, it's probably less of an impact, I think, to the wider community. John says, Error 1 wasn't really rank and flank. It was a bit more like a skirmish game with units acting like individual models. Yeah, I think I'd not. They might have even been on round bases. I can't remember, mate. Peter saying, oh, have I missed some comments out there? All about moving forwards. Christian says pubs are banned or planned for April for outdoor drinking only. Yeah, that was it, mate. So my wife sent me a thing today where it was basically like, it takes too much explaining, but essentially pubs are going to open, but you can't go in them. You can sit outside, but yeah, it's going to be April before that is, and then I think it's going to be pretty much maybe like May or June or something before I can go to a pub with a friend. So yeah, I'm a little bit off there for a while. But John's saying, yeah, like heroin dealers, yeah, potentially they're maximising where they are at the moment. And the other side of it is, let's not forget that they know that at the minute people are not playing their games as much as they would like. So people are not necessarily going to friendly local gaming stores. And when they have a limited amount of product, and they know they can just sell it through their own channels, can you blame them? I mean, it might not be ethically the right thing to do, but as a pure business point of view, maybe that's the way they look at it. Oathmark Steve saying that's maybe the one I was thinking of. Spunky Tal says, yeah, you can exercise in parks now, so it's back to my school days inside it in the bushes. You can exercise in parks anyway, mate. John saying, Error 1, you could play on anything, square, round, the rules almost let you call a dog a cat. Low Tech I had to shoot up on Saturday when I got a COVID job. Blizzard says, assembling his Dreadball team, do the minis front face a flat side or a corner? They front face a flat side, mate. So the front three sides of the hexagon, or the front and the back three sides of the hexagon, or the back. But yeah, they face a flat side, mate, if I can get my words out. Sidebite says, April Fool's joke by the government, you can go to the pub but you can't drink. Essentially, I think that was the thing. Like, you know, the Ant and Deck Saturday night takeaway thing where they have the celebrity and they've got the earpiece in and they tell them to say things. That's what she sent me. It was like Ant and Deck saying, tell them the pub, like, you can go for a pint. Tell them you're opening the pubs, but you can't go inside. And then it had a picture of Boris Johnson, and then it was like them kind of like laughing at it. I thought it was quite funny. Anyway, folks, how we doing? It's 11:15. It's quite late now. We still got like 114 people in, but my voice is drying out now. I've gone a bit harsh, so yes, thank you very much, folks. Everybody that's coming tonight. It looks like we've had a good crowd tonight. There seems to be quite a few views on the video, I think. If you haven't liked the video, I would love it if you like the video. If you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It's awesome to have you give you a little notification when our Monday night live streams go live. If you're around on Wednesday, we'll have our normal Wednesday hobby hangout. It's a bit more chilled and relaxed. I paint something. It's kind of background noise for you as well, just to kind of hobby and hang out with. Christian sharing the link to the Patreon there as well. For those that are new tonight, maybe first time you've been here, this is my full-time job. This is what I do for a living. I create content online and kind of build a community around BlackJack Legacy. And a big part of that is being funded through Patreon by the community. So if you can spare $2 a month to kind of help support me, if you can spare a little bit more, there's extra bonuses all the way up to like sort of pledge levels where you can get t-shirts and mugs and things like that as well. So yeah, thank you very much, folks. I will see you all on Wednesday. If you've just come in at the end of the stream and you just want to see the main topic part of tonight, I normally upload that on a Tuesday as like a clips video, like an edited version of tonight's one, just to kind of with the main guts of the topic. So if you don't want to go back and watch 2 hours of this, that'll be up tomorrow. And what else was I going to say? Have a lovely Tuesday, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Take care, folks. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month. And there is lots of different tiers and bonuses, which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.